Yo, YouTube, what is good? It's Aeghis. In this video, I'm going to be going over Frost Mage, and it's going to be the Frost Mage guide. Pretty similar to how I made the Arcane Mage guide a little bit back. There is going to be a lot of overlap with the guide because a lot of stuff is similar with Frost in terms of like gearing, using mobility, using utility, defensives. A lot of these things have a lot of overlap between all the specs right now. That doesn't mean I'm gonna leave them out of this guide. I will still go over them just as I did in the other one, but there will be a little bit of overlap with that. If you guys have already watched the Arcane Mage guide or you haven't, I would recommend going to check that one out as well. If you guys are interested in learning Arcane, if you're curious as to how Frost kind of, I guess, sits with the other two specs, Frost is more, I would say, so Arcane has a really high skill floor. If you guys don't know what that means, it means it's relatively hard to pick up because the skill at its floor level, meaning the bottom level it takes to play Arcane at a decent rate or a decent level, is higher than it would be for Frost. So Frost is a little bit easier to pick up, but Arcane also has a higher skill ceiling as well, meaning that when played correctly, when played right, it is able to do more end games faster, have a bigger impact on the game than Frost. Whereas with Frost, your skill ceiling is a little bit lower than that of an Arcane Mage. But at the end of the day, you're still playing Mage, so there is still a lot you can do on Frost as well. So definitely take that with like a grain of salt, although it is true. And then in terms of fire, I actually think the way I'm currently playing Frost feels a lot like Shadowlands Fire. So if you guys played Shadowlands Fire Mage, and you're not really liking it right now because Fire Mage is not really in the best spot, I think you would like this playstyle of Frost currently, if that is, what you guys played back in the day. So I played a lot of Shadowlands Fire, got rank 1 as Shadowlands Fire many times. It was my favorite design of Mage for a long time. And this feels really similar, just in its own little way. So now I guess we will just get into the guide. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the racials. So I'll see you guys there. Okay, so for the racials, it's kind of similar to Arcane. However, it's a little bit different. For one, I still think Nelf is one of the best racials that you can play. Nelf right now is really, really good. It helps, I mean, I've already covered this in the other video, but you can meld hunts, you can meld double tap rapid fires. If you're really good at timing it on the perfect global cooldown, you can meld, CC such as Stormbolt, Kidney Shot, Blind even. Nelf is really high skill ceiling, really high skill floor ability. That's kind of why I like it. However, if you wanted to play something that was more guaranteed value, maybe a little bit less flashy, you could definitely play Dark Iron Dwarf is solid. However, as Frost, you actually do have 2 ice blocks as compared to like Arcane or Fire, where playing Dark Iron Dwarf is maybe a little bit more important. That being said, if you guys didn't want to play Dark Iron Dwarf, you could play Panda. I think Panda is a really, really solid pick for Frost because it is the best race that works with a rogue or like a sub rogue in 2s. And if you guys did want to play Frost with RM 2s, Panda is going to be the best for that. So if that's your main game mode that you'd like to play, is like sub RM 2s or 2s or whatever, I definitely recommend Panda for that. Human is okay because you can play Shimmer a lot as Frost because you have that double block. So Shimmer basically means you can't blink out of stuns. So having that extra trinket on that 1 minute 30, basically your trinket is going to rotate on a 1 minute 30 cooldown instead of 2 minutes because you can weave Medallion and Human Racial, and that's going to have a 1 minute 30 cooldown rotation. So Human is okay if you're playing Frost. So I guess if I wanted to rank them in order, I would play maybe Nelf first, then Dark Iron, and then maybe Human. And then, like I said, if you were playing RM2s, then you would want to play Panda. if that was like your main game mode. For Horde, oh, and I do want to talk about Void Elf a little bit too. Void Elf is okay. I'll personally never play Void Elf because I don't really like, for one, I don't like the way they look. I also think that their racial is strong, the one that prevents spell pushback, but I don't feel like it's game changing. I have tried it before on the tournament realms, and I wasn't really convinced on it. And then the port is nice too. However, I think that mobility wise, you're already pretty set on the mage. So I was a little like, I guess not convinced. I think Void Elf helps you to do what you already do good as a mage. So I felt like there was a little bit of overlap there. Whereas stuff like Dark Iron Dwarf, Mage really struggles into stuff that has bleeds. So this kind of helps you in the situations that you're weak in. And Nelf, kind of the same thing. You know, you can't really avoid CC or like avoid stuns if you're playing Shimmer. You can't really avoid like the hunt that well. You can't really avoid the double tap rapid fire that well. So Nelf helps in a lot of situations where Mage is weak. Same with, you know, basically if I named off a race, it's because it helps Mage in a situation where Mage is not strong. And I think Velf kind of already, I think the issues that Velf fixes is an area where Mage doesn't seem to lack already. So that's kind of my reasoning as to why I don't really like Velf. But now we'll get on to Horde races. Your best bet, like I said, if you're playing RM2s, you definitely want to go Panda. I guess if you were looking to play more solo shuffle, or if you were looking to like, I guess play 3s, I think your best bet would probably be Orc, just for the damage increase, because you do get that Blood Fury primary stat. And then obviously you would have the extra 5% on stun reduction, which can be nice as well. Other than that, I guess Undead would be okay. Not the best, but not the worst. And then there really isn't much else that you could play on Horde. I would probably play Orc if I were to. Or actually, I would probably just play Panda because I like Panda. It reminds me of Nelf a little bit, where you can do cool plays with it. But yeah, like I said, not too many choices on Horde. I would either play, in my order personally, I would go Panda, Orc, then Undead. So that's going to do it for races. Now let's get on to the stat prio gearing and enchants. Okay, for stat priority gearing and enchants, this is looking pretty similar to Arcane as well. I will go over basically how we're just going to build our character up. So basically what we're going to do is always, I don't care if you guys have been watching Mitch Jones, we're always playing Haze Verse. We're not playing Mastery. We're not playing Crit. I will explain a little bit further why. So versatility is the PvP stat. So this is going to obviously be priority number 1. It increases the damage you do and the healing you do, and it decreases the damage you take by half the amount of verse that you have. So the damage portion of versatility, we're getting the full amount. We're getting 26.16%. And then for the damage decrease, we're getting minus 13%. So we definitely want to always have versatility on every single piece of gear that we have. And then your secondary stat is going to be haste. Now, a lot of people are confused when it comes to this, and they always comment, well, if you're not casting, then why do you want haste? And like, haste is pointless. Why do you like haste so much? Because if you read it, it says increase attack speed and spell casting speed. But there's a secret part about haste that is not mentioned here, and it's the fact that your global cooldown speed is also attached to haste. So whenever you use an ability and you see this cooldown on your abilities, that is called the global cooldown. So whenever you do this, you can't press another ability until that global is over. Haste reduces your global cooldown. So if I were to play a full mastery build, what would happen is I would actually use way less abilities over time than if I was playing a haste build. So while mastery does increase your damage a little bit, haste makes the game infinitely more playable because you're able to press buttons a lot quicker. And this is something that if you have played Mage ever before on low haste, you'll know how bad it feels. For example, when we were playing on beta, for for the Dragonflight beta, we only had about 10-13% haste, and mages were the worst god-awful thing I've ever played. Playing without haste as a mage is just, it's really bad. The fact that you can't use globals like you want, it's very, very not worth the minimal amount of damage that you'll gain from playing Mastery. So just trust me on this. You definitely want to play haste first. Every top mage would tell you that. Every single top mage at the high end plays haste first. If you see a mage playing Mastery, it's because they're either testing it, even though they know it's already bad, or they're just memeing at low MMR for content. That's all it is, really. So, yeah, we're playing haste first. Now to get onto the gearing a little bit. The basic way that we're gearing is we're going to have conquest pieces, our weapon, our chest, cloak, shoulders, neck, helm, gloves, and then our rings and our trinkets. So if you go over to the conquest vendor here, you'll see that there's two different types of vendors. So there's the Drake Breaker vendor, and then there's the conquest vendor. So the basic priority that you want to follow here when you're buying conquest gear is this. So obviously first, if you were fresh, you would fill in all of your gear with the haste first honor pieces. And if you were really, like if you didn't have any honor, you just hit level 60 or 70, then you would go to the auction house and you would buy the green gear, which is called Crimson Combatants gear. I think I might have a piece. No, it doesn't look like I do. Oh yeah, I do. So it's this green gear here. This is sold on the auction house. So you would go to the auction house, you would type in Crimson Combatant, and then you would buy the green haste first gear off the auction house. That's your starter gear. Then eventually you would want to spam any form of PvP, probably BGs because you're low gear. You would build up a lot of honor, and then you would buy the blue gear, all haste first obviously. Then you want to start one by one, queuing up rated arenas, and start replacing that gear with conquest gear. However, there is a little bit of diversity in the pieces that you'll get. We'll talk about that more later. Basically, your priority for buying honor gear, conquest gear, is you want to buy your weapon first, and then you want to buy your main pieces. The main pieces are the helm, chest, and legs. The reason these are the main pieces is because they have the most stats. You can see here, the helm has 1083 stam, 429 int, and then if we were to look at something like, I don't know, the gloves, they have far less stam, far less int. So these pieces are the main pieces. However, for the legs, like I said, we're going to get into this later, but that's a crafted piece. So you would want to buy staff first, then your helm, then your chest, or, vice versa. And then you want to fill in the rest of the pieces as well. All haste first. However, there's an exception for your boots, and I think your bracers. You want to buy these Drake Breaker gear. These bloody tokens, you can get these through world quests on the map. So you can see here, just throughout the world, the PvP world quests. Let me see if I can find any. Okay, well, I have no idea how to get bloody tokens. So just Google how to get bloody tokens because I have no idea. But yeah, so you want to buy these pieces of gear. You want to get the boots, and then you want to get the bracers as well. And then you have this vendor next to him, which is going to change that blue gear into purple gear. You will eventually get rid of these. I'm just saying right now, while we don't have enough conquest to fully, this is basically a way that you can get purple gear faster each week. The boots you will keep though, because there are no haste first conquest boots. So you can just fill in the haste first pieces. You could get the cape too, but I got the cape out of the vault. And basically how you get these is the trophies of strife. You go over here, and if you collect 100 sparks of life, then you can get the trophies of strife. And the way you get this is you have to just kill enemy players in world PvP, or you can do world quests as well in the zone. So that's how we're gearing. I will talk a little bit more about the crafted pieces now. So the crafted pieces, basically, you can have two of these. They're called embellished pieces. So the two embellished pieces that you want is the legs and the belt. You can see the effects on these. The belt is the most important by far, even though it is versus mastery, not versus haste. It's still the best because you get this reduction on CC by an additional 5%. So that's going to be huge in PvP. I personally hate that this is in the game. I don't think CC reduction is good for the game at all, but you do want to abuse this while it's in the game. So the way you're going to get these two Infurious pieces is by doing this. You'll go to this guy right here, this dragon, right here on the map. You'll type in Infurious. And then you want to simply click on the piece, the cloth one here. And then you just need to get these mats. It doesn't matter about the PvE item level because as you can see, it reads equipped, increases item level to 424 in arenas and battlegrounds. So you don't need to make sure it's the highest item level. It will be the base highest item level in an arena environment. The way you get these Sparks of Ingenuity is you go to this engine thing and there'll be a quest here and you can get that. Pretty easy quest line. And then the rest of the mats you can buy off the auction house. Same with the legs. Now I'll talk about the ring. This ring is not easy to get, but I will talk about it. I also want to just throw in there that this is not required. All the rating I have gotten has been with this green ring. I literally just got this yesterday. You don't need this. I don't think it's a requirement. However, it is good because it's a lot of stats. But I just wanted to mention I got all of my current rating with my green ring. So just want to throw that out there. The way you get this is it's called, what is it? Signet of Titanic? Yeah, there. So you need another spark, and then basically since this is not a PvP item, you need to actually increase the PvE item level. So you would need this thing, Concentrated Primal Infusion, which is going to make it 418 item level, which is pretty close to the max in PvP. It's only like -6 item levels, so not bad. And the way you get these are out of 2,400 rated loot boxes. So these things, the Victorious Contenders strong boxes. If you open these from a rating, like that, you have to be above elite, and then these are an option to get in your boxes. So like I said, you don't need this, but when you do get to the rating, it is nice to make it. Just want to reiterate, don't need it. If I didn't have it, like I said, I would just use the blue in the purple ring. And if I didn't have the blue in the purple ring yet, I would use the blue in the green one. So yeah. Now I'll talk a little bit about enchants as well. So for enchants, what we want to do is we can just look here. So I have on my rings, I have the +82. So what you would do here, item enhancements, finger, boom, devotion of haste. That's going to be the one that you want to put on both of your rings. For the legs, what you actually want to get, this is different than arcane. I have my arcane set on right now. So for frost, I will tell you, you want probably the frozen spell thread is going to be better because it's going to increase your stamina and your intellect by a certain amount. As arcane, you wore this one, but yeah, as frost, you want to wear the frozen one. So that's going to be the leg enchant. There are no enchants for those. For the boots, you can get the plain runner's breeze. So we'll go to boots, plains runner. This is going to just give you 250 speed. It's good. It's good. Then for your wrist, you have a wrist enchant that gives you +200 speed. So we'll look at that now. That one is called Devotion of Speed. There you go. 200. And then for your chest, you want Waking Stats. So that's going to be right here. Waking Stats, 150 primary stat baseline, which is pretty good. The Reserve of Intellect is for Arcane, so we wouldn't want that one. Then the Cloak is Homebound Speed. So you would go here, Cloak, Homebound Speed. Yep. So that's going to increase your speed a lot in Arena. It's going to be nice. You're going to be moving. Especially as Frost, you don't have that increased chrono shift movement speed like you do as Arcane. So that's going to be nice just to have. Now for your gems. So your neck isn't going to come with gem sockets. The way you're going to get sockets on your neck here is going to be through item enhancements. And then there's going to be tiered medallion settings. I think tiered. Yeah. So the way you're going to do this is you're going to buy 2 of the 2 slot ones. You're going to buy 2 of the silver ones. And then you're going to buy the gold one. And then you're going to apply it in that order. So you're going to apply one of these. And then you're going to apply another one. And then you're going to apply the gold one. And that's going to give you 3 sockets. Then you will go to gems. And you'll type Yes Emerald. Yes Emerald. And you want the energized ones. These are going to be the best. They're going to give you 70 haste, 33 verse. It's better than getting the all of one stat one because it just equals out to more stats. Like this is 88 haste. So while that is a little bit more haste, you're actually losing overall stats because this is 103 total stats. So you're going to want the energized Yes Emeralds for all that. And then also the same for the ring. You're not going to be able to socket your rings until later. With the Great Vault, you'll get eventually when you open this and you don't need any of the conquest pieces, you can pick the coins at the bottom and then you'll turn those coins in for sockets later on. Now I want to talk about tier set a little bit. So as you can see with the tier set, Ice Lance and Frozen Orb damage increased by 10%. And then the 4 set is Consuming Fingers of Frost increases spell damage by 8%. So obviously these are insane. You're going to want both of these effects. This is not the Drake Breaker tier set. These tier sets don't work in PvP. So you don't want to get these tier sets. Or like, they're just disabled in PvP. So if you have them, it doesn't work. The tier set I'm talking about is the one from the raid. The way you get these pieces is through the Great Vault. So through here. Or if you're watching this, I think past the 23rd, January 23rd, the Creation Catalyst will be out. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but basically what that is going to mean is that you can take the Conquest gear that you get from the vendor and you can turn that into tier gear. So that's going to be the main way that you get it if you haven't been lucky and you don't have any tier yet. The ideal pieces that we're going to wear is going to be the helm, the chest, the I don't know what they mean by page turners, breeches, and beacons, but basically you don't want the legs because you already have the embellished legs. So you're going to want the other pieces, which I think is shoulders and gloves. I can double check that. Item sets, Frost. Yeah, so you'll want the hands and the shoulders. Even though the stats are god awful, it's still going to be better because the effects are so strong. So yeah, that's going to do that for the, I think that'll do it for the gearing and the enchants. I don't think I left anything out. Stat prio, gearing, and enchants. So yeah. Oh yeah, I guess we could talk about the trinkets. So for the trinkets, you have 3 options. You have emblem, badge, and insignia. Insignia, in my opinion, fits Frost the best. Insignia has a pretty high uptime in the games. Basically what the difference is this one is going to proc throughout the game randomly. This one is going to give you a little bit of increased health for a short amount of time. And then this one is like an on-use one. So you're going to press the ability, you're going to use this, and it's going to give you increased primary stat. So it's basically the same thing as this one, except this one is whenever you press it, and this one is throughout the game. So I usually wear this one almost all the time on Frost, except for when I'm playing 2v2 with a rogue or arena with a rogue in general. Because with a rogue, the game is more setup based, so you want on-demand damage usually. But a lot of what Frost is and a lot of how Frost plays is it's very consistent damage based. So you want the consistent proc from this thing. in like most scenarios. Like I said, if you're playing with a rogue, you would probably wear this one. Otherwise, I would just run Alacrity. So yeah. Oh yeah, weapon enchant. Sorry, I'm running Sophic Devotion. So Sophic Devotion is, in my opinion, the best enchant for Frost Mage. So you'll go here and you'll go to item enhancements, weapon, around here somewhere. So basically, you can get either Sophic Devotion. The price has gone down quite a bit now. If you guys can't afford Sophic Devotion, you can get the Sophic Writ or the lesser of the Sophic Devotion. I think this is the 2 rank one. So just get whatever one you can afford. Sophic Writ is like the poor man's one, and then Sophic Devotion is the one you want ideally. So yeah, that's gonna be that. I think that about covers everything with that. So we will move on now to talents and PvP talents. So now we're gonna talk a lot about talents and PvP talents for Mage. So I will show you guys the build here. So this is what I'm playing a lot of the time as Frost Mage. Basically, just to talk a little bit overall about the build. Primarily, it is an Ice Lance oriented build. As you can see on the Frost side of things, we're not taking any of the Frostbolt talents. We don't have Deep Shatter, Frozen Touch, Brain Freeze. None of the Frostbolt talents. It's primarily an Ice Lance build. I will show you some of the games I had with an Affliction Warlock, so I can kind of show you the damage for some of the games. So this is the damage breakdown for one game. You can see how much Ice Lance damage we're doing. Then the rest of the damage here. Then we can go to this next game here where I actually out-damaged an Affliction Warlock. You can see here, Ice Lance, Ring of Fire, Glacial Spike. This is pretty much how your damage breakdown is going to look a lot of the times. And then the Blizzard and Frozen Orb will explain that later. And then just to show you, I mean, like, as Frost, you're really able to keep up with the other classes, like Ferals, Unholy DKs, Affliction Warlocks. You are able to actually keep up with the these classes and damage, which is pretty insane with this build, considering that it's quite literally all just Ice Lance, which is why the build works right now, because the framework for a caster right now that works is something that's tanky and has instant damage. Casting is something that is really hard to afford to do right now as a caster. It's just not the framework that we all want it to be. What we want Mage to be is like a glass cannon that CCs and controls everything. Frost doesn't really play like that. It plays more like very just pump and, you know, PvE the whole game and kind of rot down the whole team, doing a lot of cleave pressure. That being said, you also do have a lot of single target with Glacial Spike and Ice Lance. So now we can talk a little bit, now that we've talked a little bit about how the build works, we can talk about the build itself. So you can see on the Mage side of things, it's looking exactly like it does for any Mage spec that we play. There's really not much to talk about here. There isn't really much that you change with this. If you did want to play Heal Block, for example, because I know a lot of mages like to play Heal Block, even though I always advise against it, because Heal Block, when you have a healer, in my opinion, is not needed, and you have to lose out on quite a few talents to get it. You have to lose out on Imp Frost Nova and Tome of Antonitis, both of which are good talents, and 2% haste, not a lot, but it's still good. And then Imp Nova is also really good, because without Imp Nova, into a PvP target, since they have the CC reduction, it's only going to be like 6 seconds. So, or it's 6 seconds baseline into the 15% reduction. So it's like 4.5 something, like 5, somewhere around there. And that's like a really, really piss route. But if you did want to play Cryo Freeze, then I would look at playing something like this. Where's my DB? There. So like I said, you would lose Tome of Antonidas and Impanova. Now you will do this when you play with the Sub-Rogan 2s, and we will talk about that build a little bit later. But right now this is like the solo shuffle 3v3 build. So you'll play this anytime you're playing 3s or anytime you're playing solo shuffle. So now to talk a little bit more about the Frost side of things, because this is kind of like the more important side to discuss. Basically, how this works is you have Orb. Frozen Orb makes Blizzard instant and increases the damage, but you don't really care about the damage. What you care about is that it's instant cast. Then you have this talent here, Ice Caller. Each time Blizzard deals damage, the cooldown of Frozen Orb is reduced by 0.5. So this is like really big deal because your Frozen Orb is going to produce you a lot of Ice Lances, and then you can see the cooldown on Frozen Orb is going down a lot. So this is like really huge to know. This is how you are going to be farming your damage back. Basically, your damage comes, I mean, we'll talk about this a lot later, but it comes from Ice Lance, and then when you Frozen Orb Blizzard, then you can start generating. Like I'm just literally sitting here and just pressing Ice Lance from the ones that I'm getting generated, and I'm doing hundreds and like 100k DPS, and I can just sit here and spam Ice Lance as the orb is generating them, and the Blizzard is giving me my orb back. So those talents synergize really well with each other. What's making your Ice Lance deal so much damage is splitting ice. Basically, your Ice Lance now deals 5% increased damage, and it's going to hit a nearby target for 65%. This also works with Glacial Spike, and it's going to make your Glacial Spike hit a nearby target for 80% of its damage. So when you Glacial, it's doing 170k to the main target, and then 141k to the other target. So that one Glacial alone did 300k damage total. Now to talk a little bit about some other talents here. Thermal Void. Basically, when you Ice Lance a target, it's going to increase, or not increase, but it's going to extend your Icy Veins. So you can see when I pop it, and then if I were to pop my Go here, you'll see Veins goes, it doesn't go down in cooldown or duration. It's actually going up. So this is going to be a really nice tool to, increase your Icy Veins. You kind of just play with it like you don't know it's even there, and it's just going to passively increase how long your Veins is active. Makes your class feel really fluent. This is another big one. While Frozen Orb is active, you gain Fingers of Frost every 2 seconds. This synergizes pretty well, like I said, with all your other Orb talents. And Everlasting Frost, because that extra 2 seconds on Orb is going to give you another Lance proc, which is pretty dope. There's not really much else to talk about. You do have a lot of Glacial Spike modifiers. We'll talk a lot about this later on in the damage section, but basically Glacial Spike's damage increased by 20%. This is actually 15% in PvP, or 10% I think, after a nerf. So you have a modifier on that. And then you also have different modifiers that we'll talk about. One of them is Sub-Zero. So the way you can think about Sub-Zero is any target that you are damaging into Ice Nova is going to have the Sub-Zero bonus. Another way you can also get it is by this. This is the Winter's Chill is gonna count as if they're frozen. Then you can root them, and then when you lance into that you'll get the Sub-Zero bonus from this. Basically, it just means if any target is rooted and frozen, it will deal 20% more. It's a really fun talent. The main way you're going to use this is with Glacial Spike. You're going to Glacial a target, and then you're going to spam Ice Nova, and that is going to make the Glacial Spike deal 20% more. Mine, unfortunately, did not crit. I'll try to do it again here, just maybe, hopefully it crits, and you guys can see. Glacial Spike, Ice Nova. So that one hit for almost 200k. Basically, another modifier that you guys have is Wintertide. We're going to talk about all this stuff later again with the damage, but I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit about the Frost talents and, what some of your modifiers are. Wintertide, You don't really care about the frostbolt damage. What you do care about is the Fingers of Frost empowered Ice Lances deal 20% more to frozen targets. So that just means if you have an Ice Lance proc here and I chuck it in, it's going to deal, you know, waiting for a crit here, 45k, and then if I chucked it into a frozen target, it would do, hopefully crit, 53k. So it's going to do increased damage to targets who are frozen as well. So you have a little bit of a modifier there. And that's kind of be it for the Frost, I guess, breakdown of the talents on the Frost tree. A little bit about the Mage tree. You don't really, I mean, it's personal preference. From my opinion, I think it's matchup dependent. But I play Shimmer almost every single game as Frost, and it feels good. You don't really need to play Ice Flows that much, although if you are more comfortable with Ice Flows, I would recommend playing that. Like I said, I think this really comes down to personal preference. I've been preferring Shimmer. I know a lot of other mages who are also preferring Shimmer right now. And then there are some mages who prefer Ice Flows. Shimmer, basically the difference is that when you are casting, you can shimmer with the cast, and you can blink in a direction while you're casting. And you do have two charges of this, so you can blink back twice back to back. It's also off the GCD, so what you can do is you can kind of combine it with a spell. For example, you can Shimmer DB on the same in one global, so boom boom, like that's very instant because it's not on the global, so you can still have another spell casted when you do it. It's very, very nice. But some mages prefer to play Ice Flows. Like I said, if this is something that you guys prefer, then you can play that. Ice Flows allows you to cast any mage spell while moving. I can't really do it because Shimmer is on cooldown. I'll try to get that off cooldown as I can, but I'll explain it briefly. So this is going to give you regular blink, and regular blink is just the version of blink that has been in the game since the game has come out. It's just the normal blink. It allows you to blink stuns. It has the shorter cooldown. It is on the global, and you can't blink while casting a spell. And it's on the global, so I can't blink DB like I could as fast as Shimmer. But it does allow you to blink out of stuns, has a shorter cooldown, and grants you the ability Ice Flows, which when you use it, it allows you to cast your next ability while moving. So that's just, there's two different play styles. I think it's matchup dependent. Yeah. Anyways, let me get on to the other talents here. If I can ever open up my talent tree. I guess I'm in combat. There we go. So, like I said before, there's not too many changes that we are making. I guess the one question I do get a lot is, why do I run slow when we're Frost? And basically, slow is just a really nice tool to have. So let's say you are like sheeping the healer. This guy's the guy that we're going to be sheeping. As soon as he comes out of this sheep, you can then put a slow on him. There are a lot of ways, I guess, that you have to think about. The healer has a dispel. So if you slow the healer off his sheep, and then now he's slow, you're kind of putting him in further CC without having to use a damage global on him. So the only way you could really slow people as Frost is with Frostbolt, which is a cast, so that's not ideal. Flurry puts a little bit of a slow on them. And then you also have regular slow, or you could put Orb on them, which will apply the slow from that. Or you could Blizzard, which slows people from that. But you don't have an instant slow, an instant ranged slow. So that's what that talent is going to kind of fill that void. I just wanted to throw that in there, I guess, briefly. Like I said, there isn't too much to talk about here with the PvP talents or with the regular talents. I have kind of rambled at this point about stuff that we're all going to be talking about later, like all the talents and when you use them and how you use them in combination with each other. But this is kind of what you're running all the time. I never really play Rune. I never really play anything else down here, except for when I play RM2s. And when I'm doing RM2s, this is kind of what my build looks like. I will show you here. So I drop Antonitis, Imp, Frost Nova, go Cryo Freeze, and then instead of going Time Anomaly, Greater Invis, and Flow of Time, I actually do 2 in Time Manipulation. And then from here, you can kind of be a little bit flexible with these points. I like to go freezing cold and displacement. The reason you want 2 in time init is because when you Ice Lance, it's going to reduce the cooldown of your loss of control abilities. So that's going to be Dragon's Breath, Ring of Frost, Ice Nova, and Frost Nova. So these two, Ice Nova and Frost Nova. So the main reason you're doing this with a rogue is that you want Dragon's Breath back quicker. Because you need Dragon's Breath back when you're playing with a rogue so that you can do goes off DR or off cooldown. So you don't really want Time Anomaly because Time Anomaly is a little bit RNG, and with a rogue you want something more consistent. You don't want something so RNG. Greater Invis you can afford to give up even though that is your wall, because you do have the 2 ice blocks with heal block as well. So you don't really need that extra little bit of defensive from Greater Invis. And then Flow of Time is already kind of a bad talent. The only reason you're ever really taking it anyways is to get to Greater Invis and Time Anomaly. So like I said, this is what I'm playing with a sub-rogue, and then over here I would change Splitting Ice to Ray of Frost, and that's it. That's all you're changing over here as well. So that's going to be the ARM 2v2 build. Now we can talk a little bit more about PvP talents. Okay, so for PvP talents, there is not a whole lot to talk about here either. Concentrated Coolness, you are pretty much locking in 100% of the time. Ring of Fire, kind of the same thing. And then this third talent is where you have a little bit of wiggle room. So Chill to the Bone, you don't ever take this, it's really bad. Ice Form, you don't really ever play this either. The only time I guess you would play this is if you were to play Rune of Power. But even then, I think it's still a meme build. Like if you watched Mitch playing this or whatever Mitchers are, they were playing this to get that instant Rune of Power to drop. But it's not good in like a high rated scenario or like a scenario where you're pushing a rating, trying to push a real rating. So would not play that. Snowdrift is a kind of a real talent. People kind of sleep on it a little bit. Basically the way Snowdrift works is that you would pop it and then you have to be on top of an enemy, and then after 3 seconds they become stunned. So it's not that bad of a talent. It's not super consistent either, because the way enemies will outplay this is simply by leaving the zone, or if they even just use a movement ability such as maneuverability, sprint from the rogue. Basically any type of movement freedom, so like Pally Freedom, Maneuver, Tiger's Lust, Blade Storm, I think Avatar as well. Any of these are going to reset the duration of the build up. So it kind of does have a lot of counterplay. So like you would use it, and then if they were to press Tiger's Lust right now, this counter would restart. A cool thing to note about this talent is whenever you lance into the stun itself, it does get the value from Wintertide. So pretty cool. Or sorry, Sub-Zero, not Wintertide. You get the extra 20% from Sub-Zero. So it's really strong. If the stun does go off, it actually looks like it's not affected by shifting power. I think that might be a bug. But the 45-second cooldown is kind of nice on it. Like I said, it's a bit of a meme ability, but I swear it could be good because sometimes I play it in comps where we don't have a lot of stuns. So you can see here, the more damage that you pump into it, it does pretty good damage when you pump into the stun. That's its like saving grace, the fact that the 20% works into it. I would play this. Like I said, you don't have a whole lot of talents for this third option. The really only real options are precog, but if you don't need precog, like if something has no kicks, and you're not really going to be the target, so you don't want Netherwind, you could either take Ice Wall or Snowdrift depending on the comp you're playing. If you're playing a very dampener comp like Mage Lock, maybe you would just have a better time going Ice Wall or Precog. However, if you're playing something a little bit more setup based, like maybe Windwalker Mage, where the comp has a lot of downtime because the Windwalker stun is 1 minute cooldown, you could run Snowdrift to fill that gap. Like I said, I don't really play it that often, but I don't think it's the worst talent ever, so maybe you could run it. This is kind of what I run a lot of the times because there are a lot of interrupts present in the game, and precog is going to really help you to get the glacial spikes off to consume your icicles. That's going to be a really, really nice tool to help you get shifting powers, ring of fires, glacial spikes, all these really important casts off. So this is kind of what I lock in a lot of the times. However, when there's only one kick available on the enemy team, let's say for example you're fighting I don't know, shadow play, so Resto Druid, Affliction Warlock, or Demo Warlock, Shadow Priest. Let's say you're fighting the Demo version. The Demo Warlock only has a 1 minute cooldown kick, and there's only one kick on the whole team, so precog isn't going to get too much value. So in something like this, you could just play Netherwind, so that you're taking 10% less critical strike chance the whole game. Basically, how this talent works is, a lot of people sleep on this talent, but if someone has 8% crit and you're using this, they can't crit you. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't ever be crit if they pop like something that's going to increase their crit chance. For example, if I shatter, the way Frost Mage does damage is they can shatter a target, and that's going to increase their critical strike chance by 50%. So if you were attacking a target who had Netherwind armor, it would increase it by 40%. So it's not to be misunderstood like that. However, it is a flat 10%, so you can run this if you're going to be trained for a very long time. So against Pharaohs, it's pretty good because they have like a 100% uptime on you. So if you can avoid getting crit as much as possible, it's good. If you're on a map such as like Blackrook or Blade's Edge, or something that you think you can get a lot of value out of Ice Wall is a decent talent. I think it's a little bit hard to use correctly. It doesn't look like it lets me use it here, but Ice Wall is a good filler slot for this talent as well. And that's about it. You never really use, I don't ever really like using Frost Bomb, and I don't really ever like using Prismatic Cloak. So that's going to be it for the PvP talents. Now let's move on to the burst rotation. So yeah, I'll see you guys then. Okie dokie. So now we're going to talk a little bit about burst rotation when playing Frost Mage. So this is how your basic burst is going to look. I will just do it at first, and then we will talk about it afterwards. So I'll try to give you just a little bit of commentary here. So I usually always try to start the interaction with a Ring of Fire. It's good if you can. Then I will throw a Flurry. Then I will Orb, Blizzard, Icy Veins, and then I will throw my 2 Ice Lance procs, another Flurry, 2 more Ice Lance procs, Blizzard once it's off cooldown, Ice Lance, Flurry, Ice Lance, my Orb is off cooldown, put that down, Blizzard, Glacial Spike, Ice Nova, Frost Lance, or Ice Lance, Blizzard, Ice Lance, Blizzard. And then basically you would just keep repeating the same process with Blizzards, Ice Lances, and then Glacialing in your downtime. So basically, to slow this down just a little bit, we will talk a little bit about all the modifiers, why you're flurrying, why you're blizzarding, why you are veinsing when you do, why you throw your flurry first. So to talk about it, let me actually just get my chicken power here. So the reason you're starting with a Ring of Fire is because it's good if you can, get this extra little bit of damage in before you start your burst. I do this pretty much with every single spec. I think this talent is really good. Then you want to throw a flurry because you want to get a flurry on cooldown. Basically, when you flurry, then you would get it on cooldown, so that when you pop your Icy Veins, if you guys didn't know, Icy Veins grants you a charge of Brain Freeze and Fingers of Frost. So basically what that means is that's going to give you a free flurry charge, because if you look at Brain Freeze, it has a it gives you another flurry and causes your next flurry to do 50% increased damage. So you want to have one on cooldown already before you pop Icy Veins. It's also going to give you a Fingers of Frost proc as well. So you Ring of Fire, Flurry, that's going to put it on cooldown. Then you want to Icy Veins. You can throw or put your orb down, then Blizzard, and then you want to start spam lancing, Flurry, Lance, Blizzard. The reason why you're blizzarding is because you want to get that orb cooldown. And then the reason why you're flurrying, a lot of people will be confused on that as to why you're throwing your flurries and then lancing into those. Basically, when you lance into a frozen target, here, let me see if I can pull up my talents. You can't do it while you're in combat. So basically the way flurry works is it makes the target count as a frozen target. So you throw it here, taking damage from the mage, mage's spells as if it were frozen. So you could flurry and then lance into it, and that would count as if you had a Fingers of Frost proc. But when you throw a Fingers of Frost procs, which are these, the Ice Lance procs that you get, Fingers of Frost, if you throw those into the flurry, they get Wintertide value, so they deal 20% more, 55k, 52k. Whereas if I just had a normal proc, I can't really get one right now, but if I just had a normal Ice Lance proc, it would do 20% less than that. So that's cool. That's a really cool way to burst. It's even burstier if you use the flurry granted from Icy Veins, because that's going to make your flurry deal 50% increased damage. So, and then after you do all that, so like I said, after you Ring of Fire, then Flurry, then Orb, then you want to put your Blizzard down first. So I'm just waiting for that to come off cooldown. So you would Ring of Fire, Flurry, then you would Orb. First thing you want to do after you Orb is you want to Blizzard, because you want to get that reset from Ice Caller. Each time Blizzard deals damage, the cooldown of Frozen Orb is reduced by 0.5. So when you're cleaving a lot of targets like this, it's going to really make your Orb cooldown go down a lot faster. So I'm going to do it again here, now that we know a little bit more about our modifiers. So we want to Ring of Fire, Flurry, because we want to get it on cooldown. Let's assume I had 2 there. Orb. And then we can throw this Flurry in. And now this is going to be our big burst. Blizzard again before our Orb runs out. We're just going to keep doing that. Now that we have some downtime here where we're not getting any Ice Lance procs, we want to Glacial Spike. Then we can restart here with the Orb again. Blizzard. We don't have any flurries this time, so we can't do super big burst. But we're still going to have really good damage here. And this is all going to split and be cleaving on everyone as well. Now that I don't have any Ice Lance procs, I can Glacial. My Blizzard is off cooldown. Or my Orb. So I'll Blizzard right away. Start throwing the Lances. Get another one of these. You wouldn't want to Glacial here because you're still generating Ice Lance procs. And you don't want to over-generate those Ice Lance procs. So this is a mistake that I see some people doing. Is they'll Orb. And then they'll like Glacial Spike here. But keep in mind, every 2 seconds you're building Ice Lances. So that whole time you're Glacialing, you've actually lost like 2 free Ice Lance procs. So the Glacial is more for your downtime between your orbs, or when you're not generating procs. So like now I guess we'll talk a little bit more about your filler damage. So in this downtime here where you don't have Orb, let's say for example you aren't against something where you have this much cleave potential. So I'll do it kind of again on this target here. So let's say for example I Ring of Fire to start, I Flurry. Let me get my veins off cooldown real quick. Okay, let's just restart that. So Ring of Fire is down. We Flurry. Then I Orb. Then I Veins. You can see here that my Orb is not resetting itself as fast. And I've used both of my Flurries for Burst. I can Glacial, Ice Nova that for the Sub-Zero value. I can throw an Ice Lance into the Glacial Root. Here I can Ring of Fire. I actually got a proc from Time Anomaly. What I want to be doing here is Blizzarding a lot. You can walk up to the targets. You can't Nova this target, but you can Nova them. You can Nova and Lance into that. You want to make sure that you're Blizzarding always. Flurry, Lance, Lance. Here you can get your Orb down, throw your procs into it. Still going to just be using my Ice Lance procs here. Another Blizzard, Ice Lance, Ice Lance, Ice Lance, Ring of Fire, instant Blizzard. Here I would Glacial. I will Shatter that with Ice Nova. I will throw my proc into that. I got a Time Warp. So I Blizzard. Now I have nothing, so I'll Shifting Power. I'll throw my Flurry, Lance into those. My Orb is back off cooldown. So there's stuff to do. I think after this one, after this burst rotation, you'll see that I do run out of stuff to do. And this is what I do want to address. So we'll just let that happen. I'm just going to keep throwing all my procs. So you can see eventually I've now hit this point where in the worst case scenario where I'm DPSing a single target, which is hardly ever going to happen, I've now run out of stuff to do where I have no Glacial, I have no Veins, no Orb, my Blizzard, no Flurries, no Ring of Fire. Basically at this point you want to kite. This is your downtime. There's really nothing you can do here except for look for high value blizzards. So you can maybe blizzard like a pack of pets, or you can blizzard something. But in this scenario you want to spell steal, you want to be casting polymorphs, you want to be repositioning yourself, you want to either be playing defensive with roots, blinking backwards, trying to survive with alter time until your cooldowns are back up. Maybe you can push in for CC here. There is a lot of stuff, a lot of scenarios that you could be doing. But like I said, that's a worst case scenario because you are only hitting a single target. If I were maybe hitting like, let's say I can Blizzard like 3 targets. So my Blizzard is not getting as big value here, but maybe the whole enemy team, the whole enemy 3's team is stacked here. And you're Blizzarding a little bit, you'll see it even resets. Like this is more realistic. So maybe you have this downtime. At most, you're only going to have like 20 seconds of downtime, unless it's like a really unfortunate event. You can see now my Orb is off cooldown again. So this is going to just be something that you need to practice. I would just recommend sitting here on the target dummies and training this over and over again. That's really how you're doing your damage as a Frost Mage. It's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to talk really. Like I said, it's not the most complex rotation in the world. Basically just doing this exact rotation. You know, you can see Glacial Spike, Ring of Fire, Ice Lance. My Ice Lance is my main source of damage. The Ring of Fire is there as well. The Glacial Spike is adding that extra bit of burst because I can hit those 180Ks. And then this is the Blizzard cleaving people, the Frozen Orb cleaving people, the Flurry to give me the Winter's Chill to make my Ice Lances hit harder. And then that's about it. You can see I really only casted like 2 Frostbolts. Like one Frostbolt. But yeah, that's kind of how you're doing damage. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that. There isn't too much more to explain with the damage rotation here, so I guess we can get on to how to use your utility kit. So yeah, we will get onto that. So something I forgot to talk about was Ray of Frost. Whenever you play Frost with like a rogue. So basically how you're doing damage with Ray of Frost is first you want to apply your Flurry debuff. So this is going to make sure that the target is going to count as frozen. Because basically whenever you are doing damage to a target, you want to make sure that they are going to get the effect from Shatter. Shatter basically says that against frozen targets, your critical strike chance is multiplied by 1.5 and adds an additional 50% critical strike chance to any target that's frozen. So when you shatter a target, or when you do your spells into a target who is frozen, you are going to get the effect from Shatter. So that applies for Ray of Frost. If we were to just do a Ray of Frost into this target normally, none of them would crit, or they would have a very low percent chance to crit. However, if we throw the Flurry and then we Ray of Frost, it will actually not even consume any of the Winter's Chill, and it will pretty much guarantee that every tick of Ray of Frost is going to crit. So that's something interesting about Flurry, is that it doesn't get consumed by Ray of Frost. So that is going to be something that you're going to want to combine those two abilities when you're playing with a rogue. So whenever you're dropping Splitting and going Ray of Frost, again, you would only do this if you were playing with a rogue in some scenario, because you wouldn't want Splitting Ice, because you wouldn't want to break CC. So I just wanted to throw that little bit in there because I did forget to mention that. So now let's continue on. Okay, so next we're going to talk about our utility kit. So first, Mage has a lot of utility. I've pretty much discussed this exact thing. It's not too much different from the utility part of my arcane guide, but that doesn't mean I won't include it, because there are some differences. So first of all, you have Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath is a cone ability. You can see when I use it here, it is a cone that hits targets in like this general area. This is about the range that it has on the ability. It lasts for 3 seconds in PvP. It does a small amount of damage, and this is a pretty good tool for a couple different scenarios. You can Dragon's Breath a target into a polymorph, because the DB disorients them, so they can't play their character. This does break to dot damage, so if you're playing with a class who applies dots or bleeds, the DB will break. However, it doesn't break to anything you have really, except for like Orb and Ring of Fire. It would break to those, just to show you here. So I'll get my DB back. DB, and you can see it breaks instantly. But if it doesn't break, you can use it on like a healer, for example. You could blink Dragon's Breath into a Sheep or Ring of Frost, and then you could continue to burst down the kill target. You can use it when you're kiting, and then the warrior charges to you, and you can DB him real quick, and then you can further kite. You can use it as like a peeling tool. It has a lot of different usages. Then we have Polymorph. Obviously, Polymorph is the thing that you'll be spamming when you have your downtime or when you're trying to peel DPS off you. So Polymorph is a great tool. I obviously can't polymorph these targets, but it basically says it would, well, the tooltip is for PvE, but basically you cast it, turns them into a sheep for, I think it's like 6 something seconds now with the PvE reduction, or the PvP crowd control reduction. So you sheep them, and then they can't play their character for 6 seconds unless they trinket it or get dispelled out by their healer. It does cleanse all bleeds. So if you sheep a target and you have like an Asa Rogue on the target, you will cleanse all the bleeds. So you don't really want to sheep. Sometimes, like if you're playing with an Affliction Warlock or an Asa Rogue, you want to be careful about who you're sheeping, because you don't want to remove their dots or bleeds. However, DB is a really powerful tool if you're trying to like CC a healer. So if your DPS stuns, like if, let's say you're playing with a rogue, he kidney shots this guy, you go over and you Dragon's Breath into Polymorph on the healer. That's going to be a really powerful crowd control chain. So that's something you should be looking out for. Now we'll talk about Ring of Frost. Ring of Frost, the way this ability works is, if you see it here, this outer layer, this ring, this blue ring, any enemies who walk into that blue ring will get rung for like however long. It's supposed to be 8 seconds, but it's reduced by 15% in PvP because of this trinket set bonus. The way I think about this ability is it's basically a casted frost version of the polymorph. It shares the same DR as polymorph. DR is basically like if you were to cast polymorph on a target, it would DR the more you cast it, which means it would, the first one would be 8 seconds, then 4, then 2, and then it would be immune. So Ring of Frost also puts people on sheep DR. So that's why I call it like an AoE aimed Frost School Polymorph, because it's actually on the Frost School. So if you get kicked on this, then you would still have your Arcane School to cast Polymorph. You can use this in a lot of different ways. You can use this to ring, let's say you DB a Druid and he's in bear form. You can ring it, like DB, ring. Or if you're getting trained and you ring a fire and you get kicked, you could put a Ring of Frost down and blink out of it. Or you could cast the Ring of Frost and then blink into it if you're playing Shimmer. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this as like a zoning tool, way to CC. Yeah. And if you do miss the Ring of Frost, let's say this is a Ring of Frost because my Ring of Frost is on cooldown. Let's say you DB Ring of Frost, it misses. You can actually try to Blast Wave the target into it. So that's just something you should look out for as well. Now we'll talk a little bit about Blast Wave. Blast Wave is a 25-second cooldown explosion around yourself. Does a small amount of damage and it knocks enemies back. So there is actually something I want to show with Blast Wave. If I can get someone to accept the duel real quick. Let me just ask this guy. Hello. Can I test? So Blast Wave knocks people back and does a small amount of damage. The knockback should be compared to kind of like the Ellie Shaman knockback. However, there is something cool that you can do. You can actually pair Blast Wave with the Sheep Cast, and what this is going to do is it won't break it. So let's say a target is in like your orb, right? And you want to cast Sheep on them. You can Sheep and Blast Wave them out. It didn't work here because it looked like he accepted the Q. Or, yeah, that's unfortunate timing. Damn. But basically, you can Blast Wave and Sheep at the same time. Basically, as Frost, you have a lot of AoE. You're AoEing everything. So sometimes this will come in handy if you want to kind of combine this. Let me see if this guy maybe will let me test. Can I test, please? You can combine. These are the spells that work like this. I don't know. It's been the game mechanic in the game for a long time, where if you cast Polymorph, you can use a spell like Nova, Ice Nova, or Blast Wave, and it won't break the Polymorph if you do it right away. So I'll try to show it to you here. So you Polymorph, Blast Wave them out. It didn't work there, but it will normally work. I don't know. I think something's wrong with this like Orbos place that we're in, or whatever this place is called, Valdraken. But basically, you can pair the ability like that. It's really cool. You can do some really cool plays with that. One more, please. Oh. Okay, he's not going to let me. But, yeah. I'll try to find a clip, and then I'll link it because I can't get it to work out here, unfortunately. But in an arena, Blast Wave has some really cool abilities. You can knock people into Ring of Frost. You can knock people off you if you're trying to get them to, if you're trying to kite them. You can knock them, like out of AoE as you're casting the Sheep, like I was trying to explain to you here. You can knock them out of AMZ, like if they pop AMZ, which makes them, have a lot of damage reduction to magic. You can knock them out of that. You can knock them out of Priest Dome. A lot of different things you can do with Blast Wave. So now we'll talk a little bit about the next ability here, which is Counterspell. Counterspell is basically like it counters the enemy's spell cast, preventing any spell from that school of magic from being cast for 6 seconds. So if I'm casting Ring of Frost and someone uses Counterspell on me, it will interrupt the cast, and then I won't be able to cast a Frost spell for 6 seconds. So the way you're going to use this is you can use this to interrupt enemy damage, such as Mind Games, Chaos Bolt, Lava Burst, Glacial Spike, Arcane Blast. You can use Counterspell on an enemy spell cast. You can use it on the healer to interrupt Flash Heal, Regrowth, Soothing Mist, Dream Breath. You can interrupt pretty much any casted ability in the game. One thing that you can do with this is when you have your S Arena, I have my cast bars kind of here, so I can see clearly which cast bar I want to interrupt when people are casting in Arena. And I have Arena 1, 2, 3 CS macros, so I can just see and click one single button to interrupt either 1, 2, or 3. We'll talk about that more later when we go into add-ons, but basically that's how you want to be using your Counterspell. Now we have Ice Nova. So Ice Nova is a little bit different for Frost as it is the other specs, because you're using it to shatter. That's how you're getting your big damage numbers on your glacial spikes. You can also shatter, because remember, basically, the way we're using this is to get value out of Sub-Zero consistently. This is basically to make our damage deal 20% more. So there is the traditional glacial into Ice Nova combo, but there is something else you can do. So you can actually combine your Winter Tide value with Sub-Zero. Let's say you don't have a glacial built up. You can simply just throw a Fingers of Frost proc into the end of Ice Nova. So you can Ice Nova, Fingers of Frost proc into that, and that's going to do a lot more. I didn't get a crit, unfortunately, but so you have a lot of different usages for that. Like I said, Glacial Ice Nova, that's going to make it hit really hard. You can Ice Nova just for a little piss root, and then you can throw a Ice Lance into that. But you can also use it for utility, so not for damage, for running away. And the way that this works is basically like, let's say you're snared and you're like running to a pillar, or you're like trying to kite. You know, you Nova them and you're kiting, but you're like slowed, and then the Nova is like about to end. Someone broke my Nova. Let's say the Nova has like 1 second left and you're just about to get around the corner. You can Ice Nova them just for a second, and then you're able to get around the corner. So it's a route that's not on DR with your normal route. So you can route a target into a route. Ice Nova will actually also cancel like the hunt effect. So if an enemy DH is casting the hunt and you Ice Nova him from range, let's say you have to get it before the cast bar goes off. So he's casting the hunt, I Nova it, it'll keep him in place, and then you can further align it. So that's Ice Nova pretty much. Spell Steal, I will put a list on the screen, just as I did with Arcane. I'll put a list on the screen as to what abilities you can Spell Steal in a priority list as well. Basically, you're just taking this ability because you can Spell Steal, or you can basically purge enemy buffs, enemy offensive or defensive buffs, such as like Power Infusion, Alter Time. You can Spell Steal Hots from Resto Druid or Dream Breath Hots from Evoker. You can Spell Steal really, really important things, and like I said, I will attach an image that will show you a list of really important things to Spell Steal. Basically, the way you'll identify what you can Spell Steal is they'll be like outlined by white. So like this buff, for example, if we were in a duel with this guy, this would be outlined white. That means I can Spell Steal the target. We've already talked about this a little bit, but slow. It's really nice to have an instant cast slow. As we do have a lot of slows on Frost, we don't have one that's an instant cast ranged, like that doesn't do any damage. So if I were to like sheep a guy, the sheep is about to end, I can put a slow on him too after the sheep. If I'm just kiting him, I have no way to instant slow this guy, except for if I wanted to use my orb, but I don't really want to use my orb because I want to save that for damage. But I'm trying to kite this guy. I have no way to instantly slow him, so I can just put slow on him. It's a really, really good ability. No cooldown, 35-yard range, 60% with the Frigid Winds additional reduction. It's a really good ability to use just to slow the target from range. Really good. Now we have Frost Nova. So we actually have 2 charges of Frost Nova because we are going down the Ice Ward path here with Shifting Power. So now I guess I will talk a little bit about that. So you do have 2 charges, so you have to be a little bit careful with Ice Nova. Frost Nova, because they do DR with each other. And basically, another thing you have to keep in mind is that Frostbite also DRs with your Frost Nova. So we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about Frost Nova, Frostbite. But basically, Nova, it's pretty straightforward. It's an AoE ability that Nova's targets in a circle around you. You will use this for kiting. You can use this to make people stand still for easy Rings of Frost. It does break on damage. So if I Nova someone and then I Ice Lance into it, sometimes you do that, it will break when you Ice Lance into it, because it does break on damage a little bit. like I said, you do have 2 charges, so you have to be aware of the DR. You have S Arena, so this will track root DR. It only shows polymorph on here, but basically it will also track root DR. But like I said, you do have to be careful with this DRing with Frostbite. So Frostbite says gives your chill effect a 10% chance to freeze. So let's say I throw a Blizzard down. You can see there's a Frostbite proc, there's a Frostbite proc. 2 more. If you orb, it'll proc it as well. So you can see everyone's getting frostbitten. So this is something that makes your orb and your Blizzard really annoying to deal with from the enemy team, because they're just getting spam rooted in there. So sometimes you might go to Nova a target and it might be shorter than you expect because they're on Frostbite DR from the burst. That's just something that you want to keep in mind. However, I think Frostbite is a really good talent because it's just an annoying mechanic to play against. If I orb someone and Blizzard them, I like the fact that it's going to root them in my Blizzard, because that's going to make sure that that's resetting my orb quicker. It's going to make sure my orb is doing damage. It's going to make sure my Blizzard is getting reset value. So I really do like Frostbite. I just wanted to mention, you should keep in mind that Frostbite DRs with it. Then we have Remove Curse. Remove Curse is really good. It's kind of an underrated task that you have to do as a mage, where you have to remove curses. So I will also put a list on the screen as to what abilities are high value. First and foremost, Hex on your teammates is the biggest one you could probably remove. Then you have the Warlock curses, especially the amplified ones. Basically, Warlocks can amplify their curse to further the effects. So the biggest one is going to be Tongues. I track this with Tell Me When. So if they put Tongues on me, basically what Tongues does is it reduces your cast speed, so increases your casting speed of all your abilities. I think this is 15% PvP now, but it's not only casting speed, it's time of global cooldown as well. So your global cooldown is going to be a lot slower. So it's going to increase the casting time and the time of your GCD, which, so you really want to get this off, especially the amplified version. Then after that, you probably want to get Curse of Exhaustion, which is the slow one. I'll show you what that looks like here. Curse of Exhaustion. That's going to look like this. Reduces the target's movement speed. And then there's one more, which I think is called Curse of Weakness. So basically when they amplify this one, it's going to stop the target from critting. So you definitely want to make sure to get the amplified version of that when it's applied. So yeah, that's going to be it for Remove Curse, really. They also have Agony. If you fight an Affliction Warlock, that's going to be a ramping, stacking damage. I'll show you what that one looks like. Curse of Agony. It's going to look like that. That one is also high prio, so you're just looking out for those curses. And then yeah, that's going to really be it for your utility kit. That's kind of all the utility you have. Like I said, you do have a lot. You actually do have Ice Wall too. We talked a little bit about that in the PvP talents. I would consider that a utility ability. You can use this to Ice Wall people inside of a room. You can Ice Wall a druid when they're using Tranquility to knock them and cancel the trank. You can use it to prevent LOS, like from a healer and a DPS, and you can kill someone in that. There's a lot of different usages. Ice Wall is a really, I would say, high skill ability. Really hard to use correctly a lot of the time. So you can, screw around with that ability a lot. I've been trying to get better with it myself. But that's about it for our utility. Now we'll go into our defensives a little bit. So let's get into that. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about our defensive cooldowns as a Frost Mage. So we have Ice Block, Cold Snap, Alter Time, Barrier, Greater Invis, and then Mirror Images, sort of. So basically Ice Block reads, encases you in a block of ice, protecting you from all attacks and damage for 10 seconds, but during that time you cannot move, attack, move, or cast spells. So pretty straightforward ability. If you use it, you're immune to all damage. So typically the way you want to use this is for value. So let's say, for example, your healer gets put into some sort of crowd control, like a Stormbolt or a Hodge, and you have 2 melee DPS on you who have wings, Warbreaker, and like all their offensive cooldowns on you. If your healer can't get out of that, like they don't have any buttons for you, it's better to just use Ice Block in this scenario, because basically you will just avoid all of that unhealable damage, because chances are you would probably die through some of your other cooldowns, like if you were to Greater Invis for the wall, if you were to Barrier, the damage is too much, and basically it just makes more sense to go into your block. So basically as Frost, you actually have 2 blocks. So you'll see here, Ice Block, I am immune to everything. You can be healed during this as well. So if you use it at a low amount of health, then you will be able to get healed from your healer. There are 2 different ways to play it with Ice Block. So without Cryo Freeze, like I said, you want to fish for more value blocks. So the way, I guess what I mean by value block is like you want to match it with a enemy offensive cooldown. So if, like I said in this scenario before, let's say a Feral Druid is on you, and he puts Feral Frenzy and he berserks or incarns you, and your healer is in CC and can't get out, then it's better to block at a decent amount of HP instead of waiting for you to get low, because when you get too low and you Ice Block, if your healer is in a crowd control CC chain or whatever, they can't get out. They're gonna just chain CC him until your block is over, and then you're kind of screwed. So you need to look for like value blocks. You want to just be trading these with big offensive cooldowns. As Frost Mage, like I said, you actually have 2 Ice Blocks. So basically the way I kind of approach block is like, yeah, I do try to get value trades. However, I try to hold on to block as long as I can too. So if my healer gets put into some kind of crowd control effect and I have alter time, then I will opt to try to use this as well. I'll try to opt to use this first if I'm like a high amount of HP. So if I'm, let's say 100% HP, my healer gets hodged, I alter, blink around the corner, I'm trying to kite the DPS, they connect to me, I blast wave them off me, he charges back to me, I root him behind a pillar, then I alter back. Now I get refunded my blink charge from Master of Time because alter time resets the cooldown of blink when you return. They're rooted over here by this pillar. Let's say they use Tiger's Lust to get out of the root, and now they flying Serpent Kick to you. You can DB them for a second. If they offensively trinket that and roll to you, then you can Ice Nova them into another Shimmer over here. And then, you know, they use their second roll to get back to you. Then you can, you know, alter time and get over here. Then you can Shifting Power your blink charges back. Like, basically, I'm just trying to use a lot of my options here to try to hold off from me having to block. However, if you're already low, then it's probably better just to send the block. So that's, I guess, what I would do if I was high health versus low health on whether or not I would block. Like I said, you do have Cold Snap. Cold Snap is an interesting ability here. It says resets the cooldown of Ice, Barrier, Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, and Ice Block. So something cool with this is you can actually use this while you're kicked on Frost. So let's say you're casting a Glacial Spike and you get kicked on Frost, and then you get bursted down really hard. You're like 1% life. And since you're kicked on Frost, you can't block. You can Cold Snap, and it will actually like unlock yourself out on those spells that it resets. So if you Cold Snap and you're locked on Frost, you can still Barrier, you can still Nova, you can still block. Although it's really bad to do that, obviously, because if you have 2 blocks and you have to Cold Snap because you got kicked, then you're, you know, wasting your second block. So the best way you can, I guess, use Cold Snap is after you're set into your first block. So let's say here in 5 seconds, let me just get it back real quick. Let's say I have to block here. Then I come out of my block and I'm fine. The target gets back onto me. I have to Barrier now. I'm like kiting. My HP is getting lower, so I would Cold Snap now, after I like Nova them once or something, run around the corner. Now they connect to me again, they shred through my barrier, I can Cold Snap for another barrier, and then keep in mind you're on Hypothermia, because when you go into block, you can't block again for another 30 seconds. It's kind of like Forbearance. So then you could snap for another barrier, and then when you snap, you have Ice Block off cooldown again. So you have 2 ice blocks as frost. So it's really, really powerful. Cold Snap, really cool ability. Ultra Time, we did talk about this a little bit. I gave like a little scenario about how to kite with it. This is the most common way that you want to kite. And something that you have to keep in mind is this is a magic debuff. So this can be purged. So the number one thing that in your mind you need to be thinking about is how can I use this ability to kite the melee DPS or kite whatever amount of damage I'm about to take, whether it be from melee or range DPS, like if a shaman casts Stormkeeper, or if a guy's casting Glacial Spike on you, or if a warrior is on you, just any type of damage that's about to hit you, you need to use this at a high amount of HP. So I see the Glacial Spikes being cast, I don't have a counter spell, or the monk has Serenity up. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Ultra Time at a decent amount of HP. I want to look for like some sort of pillar or line of sight to avoid any sort of purge from a priest or a shaman or the enemy mage or whatever. Basically you want to avoid any kind of purges. I will put on the screen who has a purge. Basically it's Evoker has the Fire Breath purge, Priest, Warlock has a 10-second, or it's like a cooldown purge on their pet. Hunters have a 10-second cooldown one-time purge. Same with Demon Hunters. Any Blood Elf has that Blood Elf racial that purges. Priests have a no cooldown purge. Shamans have a no cooldown purge. Mages have a purge, but it's expensive, so they can only do it so many times, except for Arcane. So basically you want to ideally pair this with a blink. So you would alter and you want to blink out of line of any purges. Then like I said, if they do chase you, you can opt to either Nova or Blast Wave them off. Ideally Nova them out of line, then you can alter back. Like I said, this would also refund you the blink charge that you used. So then you would have 2 blinks again to kite further. And then you still at this point have DB for peels, Blast Wave for peels, you have your other route, you have Ice Nova, you have Barrier, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Barrier now as a defensive cooldown. So Barrier is really good, obviously just for absorbing damage. It absorbs 76k damage and slows attackers who attack into it. Something to note too, people who attack into Barrier also have a chance to proc Frostbite. So something that's really funny is a lot of warriors, they'll heroic throw you as they charge. I've actually seen Frostbite proc off of that and root their charge mid-charge. It's really funny. But another thing you can do with barriers is combine it with this talent here. Casting Barrier removes all snare effects. So this is something that I don't think enough mages do with their Barrier. I've talked about this a lot in my other guides, but basically if you're snared and you press Barrier, it will hold on. If you're snared like this and you have some sort of like hamstring or movement impairing effect on you and you Barrier, it will remove the snare. So you need to use this. You need to really consciously think about using your Barrier like this. You really need to get used to using it in this way. One thing you can do a lot, like if you're weaning on a pillar, this is something that you do a lot as a mage, is you're trying to kite around pillars and whatnot. If a DPS is on you and you're slowed, you can wait for them to be just around a corner. You get around a corner, you Barrier, remove it, and now you're gone. Like you can fully kite around the DPS. You can even leave like a orb here so that you can kite, and then they're gonna get snared every time they walk into that. You can blizzard it around the one corner real quick, Ring of Fire. Like you actually do really well on a pillar as a frost mage. So you want to try to use that to your advantage, using your Barrier to remove snares like that. Basically, the other thing that you have in your defensive toolkit is your wall. So the reason why we call this our wall is any class that has like a damage reduction, we refer to that as our wall. So Greater Invis is a 60% damage reduction for 3 seconds. So you pop it when big burst cooldowns are being traded. Something that I think a lot of mages will struggle with is the wall at bad times and then still have to block. Ideally, that is not a good trade, because then you're giving up 2 of your biggest defensive cooldowns. You're having to wall, which is one of your biggest offensives or defensives, and then because you didn't like use it at the most ideal of times, you're still maybe going to be forced into block. Whereas like if you would have maybe just recognized that that was the time to, you know, go for a nice value block, and that damage wasn't really that avoidable, then you would have wall for the next go, and then you would still have your second block too, or vice versa. So something just to like, I guess, show you, let's say a ret pally pops wings on you. One thing you can do, or like actually a better example, let's say you get speared. So you're in a warrior spear. One thing you can do is you can wall alter. This is going to really reduce the amount of damage you take for this duration. And then once it ends, you can see I'm taking a lot more damage, but it got me a lot more seconds out of my alter time than if I would have just altered without the damage reduction. Alter lasts a long time, so if you can kind of pair these two abilities on some offensive cooldowns, you can save yourself from having to use Ice Block in a situation where like a warrior spear is not going to allow you to kite, unless you bug the spear, which I will leave. I will show, you know, how to do that in a different video, which I will leave in the comments or in the description. But yeah, if you compare those two in a situation where you can't kite, it will allow you to get more value out of alter time, more value to abuse the long duration of alter time. Wall is just really good, really solid ability. You'll kind of get a feel for it, but just know you need to not like choke your defensives in a way where you have to use everything on one go. Like you don't want to alter, or you don't want to like wall, and then like as soon as wall ends, you alter, and then you get bursted through that, and you have to go back, and then you have to block. Like then you've just used all your defensives in one go. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind. You don't want to be overlapping all these cooldowns like that. And then the last one is mirror images, but people like to think this ability is better than it actually is. I think right now it's actually bugged because it disappears. All three disappear on the first interaction. So I'll show you. So this guy's gonna attack me. I'll pop my mirror images here, get hit, and they're all gone. So, and the attack still hit me for pretty hard. So I don't think this ability is working right now. It's the way it's supposed to work, I think, is it summons 3 copies, and then while the images are active, damage taken is reduced by 20%. Taking direct damage will cause one of them to dissipate. And then I think there's supposed to be like a little internal cooldown. I think they're supposed to at least last 3 seconds. So it's supposed to at least be 3 seconds of 20% damage reduction, but like I said, I think it's bugged right now because you can see on the first hit, they just all disappeared. So really the only way I'm using this ability is to like eat traps and stuff. If like my healer is trapped, I can summon my mirror images, and since they summon in like a triangle, one will summon here and then here and then here, I can summon it on my healer, and then it's like extra person to eat a trap from a hunter. I don't know. It's a pretty useless ability, but it is what it is. Maybe they'll get this ability fixed soon. That's all I really have for the defensive portion of this. So now I guess we can get a little bit onto mobility. So let's talk about that for a little bit. All right. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about your mobility as a Frost Mage. It's pretty similar to that of Arcane, except you have a couple different things. You don't have Chrono Shift like you do on Arcane. Actually, let me switch back to Frost here. So obviously as Frost, you are playing Shimmer a lot of the times. But there are, I guess, matchups where you would want to play Ice Flows. Basically, to talk about this a little bit, I don't play Ice Flows that often, especially as Frost. You still have Trinket to get out of a stun, and you have double block. So as Ice Flows, obviously you're gonna be granted normal blink. If you guys don't know the difference here, so basically Shimmer lets you cast and Shimmer while you're casting, so like you can blink mid cast and it's off the global. Blink stun is on the global. You can't cast while using it, but you do have Ice Flows, which lets you move while casting. So I commonly play Shimmer because I think it's just better now. It lets you kind of stay ahead of people in terms of like being able to kite them, since you have 2 charges and you can get a 3rd charge from Alter Time. When you go back, it refunds you that charge. So I find that I have a better time kiting and a better time getting my glacial spikes off, getting my damage out. And just it being off the global cooldown makes it feel better to use. But I do run Blink Stun sometimes, if it's like a matchup into like a sub rogue or maybe something. Actually, that's kind of it. I really only use it into sub rogue, honestly. So Shimmer, obviously we've talked about this a little bit, but we will just go over it again. This is your main mobility as a mage, regardless of the spec actually. So, like we said, Shimmer you can cast while moving. So one of the big things that you're going to be doing with Shimmer a lot is like, if you have people on you, for example, maybe you can cast Ring of Fire, you get kicked on that, and then you can start casting your Glacial, Shimmer away from them mid cast, and then that will allow you to get more Glacial spikes off. So you can use it for damage like that. You can Shifting Power and Shimmer away, and that'll also refund you a Shimmer charge too. There are a lot of things you can do with Shimmer. You can drop a ring and Shimmer out. You can drop a ring here and then Shimmer into it. There's just so many different things you can do with Shimmer. And then keep in mind, I'll now talk a little bit about Alter Time and why the Alter Time can be used for mobility as well. Sometimes it's worth, let's say I'm like over here on this pillar and I'm like kind of low, let's say maybe 20%. Alter Time is not going to give you too much value in terms of like your health at 20%. So sometimes what you can do is you can use it as a kite. So you can double tap Alter and it will refund another blink charge. I'll just waste one here. So it looks like I only have one. So let's say I have 2 melee DPS on me here and I'm 20% life and I really need to like cross the map to get to my healer. I can blink, double tap my Alter, refund my Shimmer charge, and blink again. And now I'm like across the map. So sometimes you can use Alter Time to reset your blink charge and just kind of use it as like a 3rd blink. So that's why I kind of included there in terms of mobility. I think doing that is pretty underrated. It's not how you're going to be using Alter Time every single time. Honestly, it's maybe one of the more rare use cases, but it's still good to know. It's still good to include in there. Now I want to talk a little bit about Ice Flows. So Ice Flows is an ability that you get when you're playing normal Blink. So obviously then you get the normal Blink. 13-second cooldown, teleports you forward 20 yards or until reaching an obstacle and frees you from all stuns and bonds. So basically you can blink out of any stun with this blink. It's on a 13-second cooldown. And it gives you Ice Flows, which is a 20-second recharge, has 3 charges, makes your next mage spell cast time shorter than 10 seconds, castable while moving. It says here unaffected by GCD and castable while casting. So that just means that you can press this button at any point throughout the cast. It's not on the global, so I can ring, cast it mid-ring, and then start moving as I'm casting the ring. Ice Flows is a really good ability. It makes playing Blink Stun more bearable. Back in Shadowlands, if you played Blink Stun over Shimmer, you didn't have Ice Flows, so it made playing Blink Stun feel very bad. However, it was still the meta, so mages felt really immobile, but I guess DPS didn't have too much melee or gap closers back then. They didn't have like the double time and heroic leap like they do now or whatever. They didn't have double grip too, I don't think. But so I like playing Shimmer. Like I said, I feel like I can play better with Shimmer. I get to play the game more. I get more casts off. I get less uptime on DPS on me. But Blink Stun does have its place too. Some mages prefer it. If you guys do want to play it and you prefer it, that's fine. I don't think it's like the biggest deal ever, but I would recommend learning Shimmer. If you guys do see the value in Shimmer like I see, I think you'll benefit a lot from it. Especially as Frost, I think you're tanky enough to afford sitting stuns. Especially because a lot of people think that if you play Shimmer over Blink Stun, that you will be too easy to lock down, and that was my opinion at first too. And I used to play Ice Flows at the beginning of the expansion, but I think it's a lot harder for melee to have uptime on you with Shimmer. But basically, the way you'll be using Blink is, since it's on the global, obviously you have to cast it, and then you're on the global cooldown. It does have a shorter cooldown, so you can still do the same thing with alter back, and then you get another charge. And then obviously we've already talked about Ice Flows, how it can make you able to cast any ability while moving. I would recommend putting this on a bind. For example, all of my abilities are on my keyboard, so I put Ice Flows on my mouse so that I can press this while I'm pressing another ability. So it's on my front mouse button here. So that's all I really have to say about Ice Flows. Now we'll talk about Barrier. And the reason why I put Barrier in mobility is we've already talked about this a little bit, but I still don't see enough mages doing it to where you can use Barrier to remove your snares. So if you're like caught out in the middle of the map, you don't necessarily want a barrier like right here. I would wait, like if let's say you're like 50% life, you have no barrier up. Now maybe I'm like 30% life. It's more worth to hold your barrier for that little 20% gap, and then now that I'm close to a pillar, I can use it, free up my snare, and then I can kite them around the pillar. And then as long as I'm good about not letting them get another global on me, I can continue to kite them around the pillar. That's something I definitely recommend getting used to a lot. But I just wanted to throw that in there for the mobility as well. And then there is one more ability that you sometimes play as Frost, and this is only in Rogue Mage 2s. So if you guys are going to play RM2s, then obviously the build, we talked about this in the talent section, but it would look like this. You would play heal block, but yeah. It would look like that. And then you would have displacement. So displacement is another tool that you can use. So basically the way displacement works is anytime you blink, it would then leave a beacon behind. So just to show you here, I blink, and then it leaves this little purple beacon. And then if you use displace, it will bring you back to that beacon. But keep in mind that it only lasts for 8 seconds. So you blink, then you have this beacon for 8 seconds, and then you can displace back to it. The displace is on global cooldown. It's got a 45-second cooldown. Not too bad of an ability. Like I said, the only reason that you take it in RM2s is because you don't you want to in time manip so that you can reset your DB cooldown. And basically when you take 2 into time manipulation, that means that you can't go into greater invis into time anomaly, which is kind of fine. The only way you're using greater invis is for the 60% wall, but in RM2s you already have double heal blocks, so it's fine. You don't need it. And then you don't really want flow of time because it's not that strong of a talent. So you take those 2 out, and then you could put it in to, I prefer to put them into displace and freezing cold. So that's my RM2s build. I don't ever really take displace outside of that. I just think it's better when you don't have a healer. It's nice to have that little extra bit of mobility. If you have alter up, if you have alter up too, what you can do is, like, let's say you alter here. Since you're gonna alter back, it's gonna give you another shimmer. So something you can do is like, if you have an alter, let's say on this side of the pillar, and you kite around, since you're going to be altering back anyways, you can use a shimmer charge here, like blink into the wall, just to drop your beacon. So that when you alter back, you still have the beacon over here, you have your double shimmer charges, the melee connects, and then you displace back. So that's just something you can do with displace as well. I do that quite often, just to kind of like sit on the pillar. Like I said, in RM2s, you don't have a healer, so the name of the game is taking as little damage as you can. And that's why I like that little extra bit of mobility in RM2s. But yeah, that's all you really have for mobility. So now I guess I want to talk a little bit about real game scenarios. So being trained, dealing with interrupts, stuff like that. So let's get into that. Okay, so getting trained as Frost is a little bit different than Arcane in a way, because you don't have to cast nearly as much as Arcane. You still have to cast a little bit, so there is some overlap. Because you have to cast Ring of Fires. Sometimes you have to cast Blizzards. You have to get your Shifting Powers off. You have a Glacial Spike cast as well. And then obviously, like, if you need to poly something, which you're not doing too often, but if you do, those are casts that, you will be casting throughout the game. That being said, there are a couple things that you want to look out for when you are the target. First and foremost, as a mage, when you're getting trained, all it comes down to really is trading your defensive cooldowns correctly, trading defensives correctly. So one thing that you'll notice in this game, you have 2 ice blocks. So if they are going you, basically what's going to make or break the game, since you're the target, is, are you overlapping cooldowns with your healer? So for example, if your healer is in tree form, and Iron Barks you, you don't want to overlap a cooldown with this. So basically, when they Iron Bark you, when they put Earthen Totem down, when they sack you or bop you, or give you time dilation, like if you're playing with a dragon healer, these are all cooldowns that you need to know that when they use them on you, you have to really try not to overlap with them, meaning you don't want to block. You ideally need to really try to save your greater invis, your wall, because they're already putting damage reduction on you. I would say it's okay to use alter. Like, for example, if the healer's in tree form and he Iron Barks you and you notice you're dying through, it could be fine to press alter just to mitigate a little bit of damage. But you'll notice a theme of this game. It's a lot of making sure that my healer, that I'm not overlapping defenses with my healer in terms of ice blocks. Ice block timing is really crucial as Frost, and all the other specs as well. However, it's more crucial as Frost because you have 2 of them. So you might feel inclined to throw your blocks more freely as Frost, but that will bite you if you do that, or if you get into the habit of just throwing them too easily. So you don't want to overlap if your healer has committed a cooldown on you. What I do is I have a tell me when, somewhere like, it's like somewhere around, can you see my mouse? You can't. Oh, you can. Okay. It's like somewhere around here is like where I track healers, like if they put something on me. You guys will see that later. Basically the next step, because you don't want to overlap defensive cooldowns, basically you want to abuse precog in a lobby such as this one. Here, I'll show you. So you can see this lobby is Demon Hunter, Windwalker, DK, and Resto Shaman. So lots of interrupts present. As any other mage spec, you would severely struggle into a lobby such as this one. I think Frost actually has the best time and has the least bad matchups out of any mage spec in solo shuffle, because of how little that you actually have to cast. So yeah, you can abuse precog windows. That is the PvP talent that whenever an interrupt is used on you while you're not casting, it gives you a 4-second immunity window, basically where you have 15% increased haste in this window, and you are immune to all CC and interrupt effects. So what this is basically saying is if you juke a kick, precog will give you a little immunity window. If you guys don't know what juking is, it's basically where you start a cast, you intentionally cancel it with the intention of baiting the enemy to using a kick, and then since you canceled it, you don't get locked out on that school, and it gives you a nice precog window so you can't be further interrupted by the other interrupts or micro CC'd by like a pet stun or a leg sweep or a para, something like that. So with your precog windows, a lot of the time what you want to do is you want to get shifting powers off with these. You want to shifting power with that. You want to get your glacial spikes off. You can get Ring of Fires down, or you can cast blizzards. Those are kind of like what you're doing. I would say maybe this is probably the order that you would want to prioritize it as well. Maybe Blizzard and Ring of Fire could be swapped here, but basically the next thing you want to do, you are gonna kite still as a Frost Mage. So one thing you want to do is you want to kite. So you want to be aware of your positioning in relation to your healers. This is a little overlap from Arcane. This is mage wide. This is just any class needs to think about this when they're kiting. So what you want to do typically is, I wouldn't want to kite on top of my healer, because let's say I'm fighting this comp right here, and I bring these DPS onto my healer. Let's say I bring a Windwalker and a DK on top of my healer. That's not going to be good, because you don't want them to be in kick range of your healer, and you don't want to potentially line up a double leg sweep for them. You don't want any kind of situation like that. So when you are kiting, you need to kite with two things in mind. Let me pull up the notepad again. So you want to try to do this. You want to kite the DPS away from their healer, while also maintaining, while also not kiting directly on top of your healer. So it's fine to kite in the direction of your healer, you just don't want to be standing on top of each other. So you do often want to look at these two scenarios. The reason why you want to kite the DPS away from their healer is because if we just look at the map here, let's say the enemy healer is, let me just drag this over here. Let's say the enemy healer is on this pillar right here, and you kite, let's say the enemy healer is sitting on the pillar, and the two DPS and you are out in the middle. If you blink over here in this direction, the DPS follow you. The healer then has to leave the pillar and put himself in the middle of the map. This is going to leave him susceptible to interrupts, susceptible to your teammates, potentially landing some sort of CC on them. It just makes it sketchy for the DPS to want to follow you this deep in and kind of line their healer. This also just lets you do more DPS to them while they're getting healed less, because the healer has to worry about his positioning now. He can't just sit behind a pillar and PvE heal them. And then if you're not, like, let's say you blink over here, but your healer's here, then your healer needs to walk a little bit more in this direction, or he could sit over here behind this tomb thing. So your healer needs to move with you as well. If he is not responding to your positioning, then you need to adapt a little bit. So maybe instead of kiting this way on top of him, you could kite over here, so that you would still be bringing the DPS out of line of their healer, and you wouldn't be kiting on top of yours if your healer was standing here, for example. So those are just two things that you always want to keep in mind as well. That's really it in terms of what you're thinking about while you're getting trained, is not screwing up, not choking defensives in terms of like overlapping. A lot of that also just comes down to UI. I recommend getting some sort of tell me when or weak aura that says when you have Iron Bark, Sack, Bop, Time Dilation, Guardian, Pain Suppression, Dome, Earthen Wall. I think I just named them all. Something that will alert you when you have that ability on you. Abusing precog windows, meaning you need to be adequate at juking kicks or weaving through kicks. So let's say we could actually change this a little bit. Either abusing precog windows or eating kicks on different schools. So sometimes if you want to cast a Ring of Fire, because you notice the DPS, like let's say they're good and they know you're playing precog and they aren't biting on their kicks, then you just want to start committing to casts. Like let's just say I want to start casting a Ring of Fire because I want them to kick the fire school, so then I can cast my Glacial Spike. So just trying to weave around interrupts in this way, or abusing precog windows. If you are adequate at juking kicks, that's going to take some time to practice. And then also your kiting pattern, being aware of where your healer is, where the enemy healer is, and trying to drag the DPS into bad spots. I guess there is one more thing. You want to use your mobility options, mobility and utility options, best you can. So this means when you shimmer, let's say you shimmer away, then they connect back on top of you, then you want to blast wave them away. If they connect back on top of you again, and you're still a decent HP, this would be a good time to alter time, and then you could use another shimmer away, and then you bring them to a bad spot, and you frost nova them, then you alter back, which gives you another shimmer, so it gives you another shimmer. Let's say they use a mobility option to get out of the route, then you could shimmer, in the direction of your healer, but not on top of them. And keep in mind, you want to pair cast with these if you can. So maybe at this point you could counter pressure since they're staying on you so hard. So you could counter pressure with a glacial, plus a shimmer. So like I said, you need to be using your mobility options in this way to where it's like efficient. You're getting mobility, you're kiting, you're taking not that much damage, you're not kiting on top of your healer, you're counter pressuring with glacial if they're being too annoying. Because maybe during all this time too, you could have an orb down and you're just lancing them, and then maybe they get kind of low as you're kiting them. So anyways, that's all I really wanted to talk about in terms of like theory, I guess, like just like in theory. So now I kind of wanted to watch this game. This was a lobby I had as a Frost Mage where I'm fighting a lot of melee DPS who would basically just train me from start to finish. So we can watch those games now. All right, so let's watch a couple games here. I'm going to try my best to not pause it too much because there are 6 rounds. I don't know if I'll do all 6 rounds or whatever, but basically we will just try to do our best here to show you what we were talking about before in terms of theory. So as you can see here, it's about to open. I go invis right off the bat. So the DK and the Windwalker are already out. I try to start with a nice Ring of Fire here, immediately get sheared, so I pop Icy Veins, and I get my Flurry on cooldown. I actually made a small mistake here. I should have flurried and then Icy Veins, so small mistake. Drop the orb. I trinket altar, and the reason why I trinket, actually I pre-altered, so I'll show you guys here. I knew that they were going to try to go right away, so I popped altar at 100% HP. Ring of Fire, orb, altar. I blink now because I want to get out of the Shaman's line for Purge. I drop a Blizzard. That's like we said, we always wanted to drop that Blizzard. Now I'm just spam Ice Lancing, spam Blizzard. I think Mage actually does decent into this exact scenario because look, my orb is already off cooldown because of all the pets. And I'm not like trying to cast too much. I'm just Ice Lancing. This kind of sucks because I have to trade out my first ice block because so for one, I was greeting here because my druid was in tree form. You can see he's in tree form with Ironbark. So I was like, there's no possible way I should have to press a button here. But I do get like 18%, so I do have to block. And then he sends the late Ironbark, as you can see here. So honestly, maybe I could have gotten away with just walling, but you can already see that we've overlapped 1 defensive cooldown. So this is something that you want to try to avoid. Had my druid either Ironbarked earlier, or maybe had I walled earlier, you could say that I made a mistake by not walling around like this area because it is a bomb limb. I did have Keepers on me. If you guys didn't know what Keepers is, I'll back it up and show you here. So like I said, I alter. I get kind of low. I go back. I was trying to stay in the darkness as well. That's something. Something else is you want to try to stay in your DPSs or your healers' defensives, like Dome or Dark, something like that. Earthen. So it could be said here, since I'm about to have Keepers on me. Or actually, I don't know when it was. Either way, it was A-bomb limb. That's the idea. So it's not the worst to have to trade out a block here or my wall, because it does line up directly with their biggest offensive cooldowns. So it's not like the end of the world here. Although it does suck that I do have to trade. So I come out, I try to get a Ring of Fire down. I'm just eating kicks on Ring of Fire left and right. They just won't let me get a Ring of Fire down. I do it here, trying to juke. Triple root. You can see I blink on top of my healer, but then I try to kind of you can see my healer responds by walking away from me, so this is beautiful. Beautiful positioning here from my druid. You can see I get a little precog window here, so you can see they kind of screw up. They kind of grant me the precog window because I just hard casted a Blizzard fully expecting to get kicked on it, and then I was going to Ring of Fire. But they just kind of, the Shaman messes up his shear a little bit, and gives me a precog window. So with this precog window, I get a Ring of Fire off into a shifting. The reason I want a shifting is because I want to get my orb back. So then I drop an orb on all that. Blizzard. Now I'm just going to spam Ice Lances. Keep in mind where I'm standing. I'm just standing away from my druid, trying to get some positioning away from the DPS. I pop Altar Time, trying to get those blizzards. I did pre-alter this. This is good. I don't know why the Shaman's not trying to purge it. Roots. Ring of Fire cast. Got precog. So something I do here is the Shaman does drop, something that will happen often with Shamans is that if they miss their kick and then you start casting like Glacial, for example, they'll drop a grounding. But you can actually time it. So you can see here I have precog. Grounding will end in like probably like 2 seconds. So you can time your cast on that. So you can see I restart the cast. I shimmer away. The grounding ends right now. And then my precog is still up. I get the Glacial off here. Flurry. Double Lance. DPS are still on me. My healer is sheared, so I'm forced into Ice Block. So if you guys look at big debuffs here, this is how you're going to tell if your healer is in CC or not. So you can see here he gets sheared. So I know that he can't heal me, and I'm taking big damage here, so I'm forced into my second block. I try to come out and CS the Shaman. He does juke me. Drop the orb. Should probably Blizzard this first. It's greedy that I didn't. Sometimes it's okay to blink through your healer like this, because when you go behind them, look at basically my positioning here. If this DPS wants to chase me, he has to line his Shaman, and he's 30% life. So this was a time where it was okay to kind of go backwards. This comes back to what we were saying on the notepad, where you want to pull the DPS away. So this is good. He can't chase me because he knows he'll die. Trying to kill the grounding. Ice Lance. And then he dies. So pretty decent game of getting trained. I was able to get a precog window where I was able to get a nice Glacial off with that. I was eating kicks with Ring of Fire on like a lot, because getting kicked on fire doesn't really mean that much, and it does open up opportunity to cast other spells, which I wasn't really doing, but it's good to try. And my kiting pattern was good. The only mistake that we made this game was we overlapped in the opener, but it luckily did not matter. So we'll start the next game here. Hopefully. There we go. All right. So as you can see here, this is a really like unique scenario, but my DK basically grips them in, gets a triple blind. So I start with a Ring of Fire on that into a Veins. This in this scenario, I don't greed like flurrying first. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fit all my damage in this small window of time. I want to be as bursty as I can in this window. So I don't go for the extra flurry. I just want to Veins right away and start getting my damage out. I don't want to be too greedy with trying to get value out of my abilities like that. So flurry, lance, blizzard, just spamming lances. And you'll notice how I'm able to just sit here. My DK has A-bomb limb up. So if they try to kite towards me, they're just getting gripped. That's why it's not that, oh, Aeghis, I watch your videos and you never get trained. Like, that's what someone commented when I uploaded this. And they were talking about this period of time that I just get to stand here and do nothing. It's because my DK is controlling them with A-bomb. So, as you can see, I don't know why I have this in. I'm not even listening to any audio. So they finally start to get on me after we just did like 70 something K DPS the whole time. So he hunts me. Something if demon hunters do and you're playing a night elf, if they do what I call like a raw hunt where they don't CC you, they just do it to you while you're not in any crowd control. You can see I melded it. So you can see I don't have the hunt debuff on me. The hunt went off and I didn't get hit by it. So this is one of the reasons I love to play Night Elf, is for outplays like this. I'll try to show you guys the timing on it a little bit more. Stuns me, big meta, hunt, and then I meld directly as it hits me, pretty much. So I melded the hunt there, which is a great start to this game. This game is going perfectly so far. I noticed that there's a lot of mobs stacked up here, so I try to get a nice blizzard so I can get that orb. I just send in the glacial. You can lance into the route that the glacial gives you. I orb, blizzard. Now I'm just spamming ice lances. I alter time because I noticed my healer from big debuff says that he's in a fear. However, the demon hunter or shaman purged it literally instantly, and I have Kiefer's on me. So Kiefer's lets the monk, basically all his abilities have a lot higher chance to crit. So this is kind of a situation where I'm really scared. I should probably kite backwards here. So I actually end up trading my wall, my greater invis. This maybe was a mistake. I maybe didn't need to do that. Instead, I could have just used my mobility because of how many hots I had. My druid's in tricky form. So again, a slight misplay on my end. Ring of Fire, Blizzard, Flurry, Lance. My healer gets sheared. So I Nova, trying to bring them away from their healer. I do kite on top of my druid, but again, sometimes you have to. My druid does a good job of repositioning here. Also, it's maybe a little bit fine when they don't have their double stuns. No Chaos Nova, no leg sweep. So I get precog here. You'll see how in a sec. Double Nova, blink, blizzard. I fake it. Now I have precog, so I cast a glacial spike. I am forced into my block because I do get a little bit low. I'm not sure if I needed to block here. I think if I had greater invis and I didn't waste it earlier, this would have been a good time. Because my druid didn't have Ironbark, so I had no Dammer Duck for that. So Earthen Wall Totem, I want to kite them out of this because Earthen Wall is damage reduction for anyone standing in the totem. So I want to kite them out of this ideally. So I trinket that, blink, because I know they want to kill me here. Kiting out the Kiefer's window. My druid does a good job of positioning with me. I alter, but I need to line the shaman here. So I'm basically saving all of my druid's healing by altering all this damage instead. You can see while I have alter up, I'm trying to eat kicks. But I don't want to eat the arcane school kick because obviously then I can't alter back. So instead I just opt to cast Blizzard, get kicked, Ring of Fire, get kicked. Since I wasn't doing anything offensive there anyways, I was just altering to live. I eat some kicks in the process. I go back now. Triple DB, Ring of Frost. They have no interrupts right now. So this is something that you also need to notice is there are windows where there are no kicks present. Sometimes in our minds, we tend to think that there's always an interrupt present. But in this scenario, there's no interrupt. So I could have literally just casted a Glacial Spike right here, and they couldn't really have stopped it unless they used like incap on it. So identifying those windows is kind of crucial here. You can see I'm trying to kite. My kiting pattern is maybe a little bad here. I kited into the shaman. What I should have done, you see where my druid is? I actually screwed up my kiting here. So I kite into them when indeed this blink should have been this way, like towards this pillar over here. And you'll see I actually pay the price for that later on because the monk has Serenity up. So I just block because my druid gets sheared. I don't really mind trading block for Serenity here because dampening is pretty high at this point. So I want to trade at a decent HP because I don't want to force my healer to have to spend more mana than normal. But I think had I blinked backwards towards this pillar, I wouldn't even have had to trade the block in the first place. So yeah, again, I'm making some defensive errors this game, and then you'll see why this is so crucial. I have Ironbark on me here. I Blizzard, Orb, spamming lances. I try to blast wave them out of Earthen because Earthen Wall Totem gives them a lot of damage reduction. Just spamming lances, trying to end the game out here. Trinket Link, another leg sweep, and I just die. So yeah, basically this game was my fault. This game was handed to us on a silver platter from the opener alone, and I overlapped my defensives, used them poorly, didn't kite correctly, and I died because of it. A lot of people, I think, would have died there and been like, melee DPS are so OP, like mages like suck. but in reality, there's stuff you can do, right? So I just want to kind of put that mindset out there that um, most of the time, if you're dying, it's because you're doing something wrong. But yeah, let's keep watching. All right, so this is DHDK. This is a like really disruptive comp. The only way this could be more disruptive is if the Resto Shaman was on the enemy team. This will be good because this will show you kind of how to respect the Shaman's Earthen Wall here. So I get into his Earthen Wall totem on all the cooldowns. I pop my Veins, my Orb, trying to get my Blizzard down, ideally. I start with a Ring of Fire just to bait out kicks. They don't kick. Get my Blizzard down a little bit late there. I do pop Altar because I noticed that Earthen Wall totem is over. So as soon as that Earthen buff disappeared, you can see here, Earthen is now gone. I pop my Altar Time. So now I'm altering all this damage because I don't have any damage reduction on me. I alter back here. My Monk is getting a little bit low. I try to get a Glacial. I Shimmer for it. I Shifting Power because I noticed that they're too far. They did kind of get baited into going my Monk here because the Monk got low. So I had a little bit of opportunity where I didn't have DPS on me for a second. So I'm able to get some really nice cast off, like Shifting Power, Ring of Fire. And then you can see now, like when no DPS is on you like this, you can really destroy some people. I really have a lot of pressure going out here. I try to look for a little ring on the Druid. Basically, it's not always the best to do this, to go for CC, because you're going to put yourself in a bad spot. You can see this alone is making me back into the target because I'm blinking in. I'm trying to play too aggressive here. That alone is going to make you back into a target. So what I should have just done was sit back and just casted more damage, casted more Glacials, casted free Blizzards. In Shuffle, that's really the name of the game. You just want to be trying to do as much damage like that. So I noticed the Earthen, so I'm going to stand in the Earthen. Orb, Blizzard, spamming Lances now, staying in the Earthen. Earthen ends. So now I want to start kiting a little bit. So I'm kiting away from my healer, or away from their healer. Still in line of mine. I get a nice Glacial off with Shimmer, Ring of Fire, Blizzard, no kicks available. I try to kite them into my Blizzard just to give me my Orb back here. I have to block because I'm getting a little bit low. We do overlap a little bit. Kind of a sketchy scenario here when you're all rotting like this. Hunt, I have hypothermia up, so I opt to alter time. I try to alter before the hunt hits me. So you can see I alter, he hunts into it, thankfully. My healer is still healing me. If your healer is healing into your altar, you want to either cancel it or go back while it's still positive. I get stunned here. My healer gets asphyxiated, and I'm on hypothermia. So this is really sketchy. My healer still does have Trinket, so he trinkets. A-bomb limb comes out, so now I really need to try to avoid damage here. I Blizzard and I Shimmer with it. I should have committed to that cast. That's something that you can do all the time. It's really good to pair your Shimmers with a cast of any sort. And he does die, thankfully. So we'll just go over these next games here. So you can kind of see in that game, I had a little bit more free opportunity. Basically, I had two targets on my team that were also good targets. The Resto Shaman is not a bad target for them, and the Windwalker was getting really low in like the opener, so they kind of got baited to go on the Windwalker. If they would have went me, I think they would have had a better time because you saw how much I was able to do, and I could have done even more had I not gone for CC, had I just gone for more damage with more Glacials, more Blizzards, more Ring of Fires. You can see once I started kind of playing in, it sort of made the game messy. I took too much damage. He had to link and block. We like overlapped on cooldowns. So kind of a misplay in that way, but let's see. So since I'm in invis, they're on my DK here. As soon as I show myself, they start to go towards me, stuns me. Now, as soon as I'm getting stunned, in my mind, I'm looking for what are they committing? Are they committing any offensive cooldowns here? So I don't see Hunt, I don't see Serenity, so I sit the Sun, and I have Earthen Wall. You can see here, he pops Serenity. So now I want to make sure to stay in Earthen. I did not think Earthen was going to be enough damage reduction to heal through this, so I do opt to use Greater Invis. I think that was fine because it basically paused my health on his big burst. And as you can see, the Earthen is already gone. They've already damaged through it. So I think that was an okay trade from me and my Shaman. I have my Orb down, my Blizzard. I pre-alter this. I blink. The Hunt goes off. He does get a lucky purge on it. The DH has one purge that he can purge you once every 10 seconds. I do think I melded that Hunt. I actually think I might have mistimed it. Let me watch. But yeah, kind of unlucky scenario here because I do pre-alter the stun. I have 6 buffs here, as you can see. This is my buff tracker. And he does purge it out of 6 buffs. A little bit unlucky. It looks like I did miss the meld on the Hunt too. So this is not looking too great. My DK zones me. I get really low, so I'm forced to block. Kind of not the worst scenario because that was the Hunt, big meta, Serenity, Kiefer's, like everything. So honestly, not too bad that I have to trade there. Because it lines up perfectly with the enemy cooldowns. You can see another Earthen Wall totem comes out. I should probably get back into that. Standing right outside the Earthen. Oh my god, cringe. Okay, I'm back in Earthen. Kiefer's. Double DB them. Double root. Shimmer. Barrier to remove my snare. Immediately get re-snared though. Blast Wave doesn't work. I trinket Shimmer with a shifting power. Now they're back on me. Notice how I crossed the map here. Instead of blinking like into them, or blinking over here like I did in the other game, I noticed my Shaman is moving this way. I know that I need to pull the DPS away from their healer, so I kite across the map. My healer does a good job of kiting with me here. And I was able to live in my hypothermia window. So now I have my second block back, which is good. Orb, Blizzard. And notice where the Druid is standing. He's in a really good spot. Susceptible to being CC'd, susceptible to being gripped in, sheared. So this is good positioning right here. He's susceptible to getting interrupted on that regrowth that he just casted. The Monk gets down to 1%, 1900 HP. A little unlucky that we don't kill him there, but it is what it is. Cast a Ring of Fire. No kicks. Only the Monk has a kick right now. So stun on me, in cap on my healer. He has nothing really to perish trinket with to save me. No link or ascendance. Actually, I think he might have link. I think Omni CD might be bugged. So I send the second block here. So this was good. This was a really good ice block. I'm sitting the full thing. You can see I get a glacial off here with Shimmer. So I come out of my block. Notice how I'm sitting the full block. Come out, double Nova, Glacial, Shimmer away, Ice Nova, and then he dies. So really good usage there. Really good game defensively and kiting wise. That was probably the best illustration of how you should be kiting the 2 melees the whole time. So we will watch this game now. Singing Invis. Try to get a Ring of Fire off with that. I did get it. Veins. Earthen Wall totem is down. Trying to stand in it best I can. I don't trade here. Notice how I'm not trading my trinket because I am an Earthen. Blinds. Every cooldown's being popped. A-bomb limb. Serenity. Everything. I do pop Alter Time. Because I'm in Earthen and I pop Ultra, they opt to swap my Shaman here. This isn't a situation of, oh, you never get trained. Like, how is it so magical that no DPS ever seem to want to target you? Like, people say this all the time, but in reality, it's because you're making yourself a bad target by playing well defensively, by using your ultras at good times, by standing in Earthen, by not overlapping your cooldowns. You become a pretty hard target to train. That DPS who are smart and notice that they're not winning games on you, they're going to start to look to train different targets who maybe are standing out of their own earthen or who doesn't have altar. Yeah. I try to rando ring the druid. This was kind of lucky. So sometimes when you have increased haste like this, you can sometimes look for it, stuff like that. Oh, okay. So I get a precog here. So I blizzard all these pets, which is really good. It's resetting my orb really quick. I try to get a glacial off with my shimmer here. I do get it. The druid tries to kick it because druids can spec into Skull Bash. He misses it, so I get a nice precog window here. I try to get a Ring of Fire off with it, but it's on cooldown, so this was a mistake. I should have shifted with this. So small mistake on my end. Ring him off air. It's kind of lucky, like I said. I blink on top of my shaman here because I want to be on top of him for Spirit Link when he presses it. But he tops himself with Ascendance, it looks like. So instead of trying to peel the DPS here with polymorphs to peel my healer, what you usually want to do is you just want to peel with damage. So I drop an orb and then I just start blasting. Since they're going my shaman, they've given up trying to go me for the past 2 games because I played so good defensively the last game. They've given up. Now they're going to try to kill the healer. So I'm just trying to do as much damage as physically possible so that it's a bad strategy for them. Trying to get this glacial off. I shimmer with it. I do barely get incapped on it. Try to get it here. Kicks me, but they overlap their kicks here, so I do get precog. So I cast polymorph on the druid with that. My shaman trinket links. I walk towards him so that more people are in the link, because what Spirit Link does is it takes everyone's health and matches them, I guess. Like something like that. Orb, Lance goes down. Alright, let's get on to the last game here. Alright. So this is probably the hardest comp that you could fight out of this lobby because of the short cooldown interrupts, the purge, and the ability to stick on you with double grip, and then obviously a demon hunter. Sticking is not that hard for him. So I come out. Looks like they want to go me right away. They grip me in. I greater invis early. The reason why is because the DK pops all his buttons. He pops like the Unholy Assault thing. He pet transformations, the gargoyle thing. So I give myself wall early because I wanted the druid to have time to hot me. You can see I don't have that many hots right now. I don't have Send Ward. I don't have Ironbark. They're popping everything. Druid healers need to preemptively heal you. They can't respond to like on-demand damage unless it's like NS, this ability here, the instant regrowth. So I wall early to give my druid time to hot me. You can see after my wall ends, now I have a lot more healing, so that's good. Now all the defensive cooldowns or offensive cooldowns come out, like A-Bomb Limb. I'm sure big meta's probably coming here, but I'm fully hotted, so I'm completely fine. I blink away because I want to pull the DPS away from their own healer. So I blink away with my altar. I cancel it. Trying to cast blizzards. Shifting power because I got kicked. That's another thing is whenever you're kicked on one school, you need to notice what other schools you have because you don't want to get kicked and then let there be like some long downtime. Look at here, like I cast blizzard. I get sheared. You still have abilities to cast. Like I have shifting, I have Dragon's Breath, I have Spell Steal, I have Poly. So just because I'm locked on one school doesn't mean that I should sit there and wait out the lockout. That's time that you want to be spending doing other stuff with your other schools of magic. So I shifting power with this opportunity. My monk is getting dangerously low. They want to go back on me, it looks like. I'm just going to DK here because he's right in my face. Double root. I'm kiting him away from their healer. I opt to sit this stun because my druid is in tree form without CC. So I just sit this. I blink away because they're in a vortex here, so I know I can just kind of cut it out here. My druid is like weirdly failing to heal me, even though he's in tree. So I have to trade block here, but I didn't want to. I was a little bit surprised that I had to block here, but it's fine. I noticed that my druid is getting incapped into fear, so I should alter and then pre-kite over here. That's probably what I should do. I get precog, so I get a Ring of Fire into a Glacial with that. Looks like my druid just opted trinkets this one. Keeps us offensive. I guess that's fine. Do have altar up for this. Essence Break. So this is another cooldown from the Demon Hunter. Whenever they pop Essence Break, it means their next death sweep is going to do increased damage. So you want to try to, you saw that spike of damage. You want to try to blink out when you see the death sweep. So this is the death sweep. You'll see it. He's doing it right now. You should try to, or no, he's not doing it right now. Let's see. There it is. It's this cooldown here, the death sweep. It's like one of their main rotational abilities. If you have Essence Break on you, you want to try to avoid the death sweep since it's a melee range attack. So I try to blink out of it, but I'm too late, and you'll see me take a big chunk of damage here. So I actually screw up a little bit. Double root, barrier, remove my snare. Trying to just bait kicks. I juked him, and he did die. So I hope this was helpful for trying to make yourself a bad target, trying to do damage while you're being trained, where you should be kiting. We did talk a lot about everything that we laid out here. So we traded cooldowns correctly. We tried to greed whenever my healer was free and able to give me some sort of damage reduction. We abused our precog windows to get glacial spikes off. And we were constantly eating kicks on pointless schools. We were aware of our positioning because we were kiting correctly most of the time. We were kiting them away from their healer, and while we were kiting sometimes on top of our healer, it was during good times or when you sort of had to, and then the healer would respond and move accordingly with you, kite with you. And we were using mobility options. We maybe could have done this a little bit better. We didn't really have any high value altars. Some of the high value altars got purged, but sometimes that just happens. So anyways, I hope this was very helpful. All right, so that's basically going to do it for the Frost guide. I am leaving out of this guide, like I did in the other one, the macros and the add-ons, because basically I'm already at the 2-hour 30-minute mark, so I don't want to go too much past that. But basically it's exactly the same. So if you guys did want the macros that I'm going to be using, I will link that below. That will be in the description. And then for the add-on section, that is completely the same as my arcane guide. So I would recommend going and checking out the arcane guide. I will leave a link to this as well, but that's really all I have for the guide. There are some other concepts that I guess, like getting the most value out of shifting power. That's something I guess I didn't talk about that is a little bit overlapped with arcane. So if you did want to, watch that as well, you could go check out the arcane guide for that. Like I said, the macros I will have down below, and then the add-on section, you could just come to this video and watch that. But anyways, that's all I have for the guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it and got stuff out of it. I hope you learned a lot. That's all I really have. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.